I trust you were able to say amen. Was it too short? Apology, I've said amen on your behalf. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of World Intellectual Property Organization Performances and Phonograms Treaty.
Order, the Honorable J.F. Fobbs, Committee Chairperson.
Malibongwe. Right. Now, Honorable Chairperson, and I'm glad you were very specific. You spoke about the WPPT. Is that correct? And that being the case, it doesn't matter what the specific name is. One issue commands all of the three before us today, and that is the integrity of copyright, the integrity of the remuneration of the originators, the creators of that, whether it is fixed or unfixed, whether it is audio or copyright. In this case, it is the WPPT, and that is the second treaty which deals with the rights of performers, singers, and musicians. And many of us know of musicians and singers who have died in poverty, while those who sold and benefited from their work actually coined a fortune. And what this does today is South Africa, together with the fact that we have got these bills, copyright and the protection of performers and the NCOP, we are now acceding to this World WIPO Treaty. And the phonograms, and may I say to the Communications Committee in our Parliament, that I am very happy that finally the SABC paid out a year ago what they owed for 15 to 20 years. And that to me was at least leading through example that we owe this money to the musicians, to the singers that we have aired on air. And that is really what this treaty grants performers: moral rights on live performances and performances fixed in audiovisual fixations. Overseas, when they repeat something you've done, guess what? You get paid. In South Africa, it's actually a brand new issue. It's like, what is that? Is that a socialist issue? Is it a revolutionary issue? It is a plain commercial recognition of the work that has been performed. And the intention of this treaty is of granting moral rights to protect the personality of the performer over and above his or her economic interests. Because what often happens is somebody decides to use that song in a jingle, but never ever approaches the performer, the singer, to ask, do you mind if we use your song here? No, they don't. And that performer's integrity is destroyed by the mere use of using it for the wrong reason. So on that issue, on the WPPT, we are going to enable or promote greater innovation, greater creativity through the protection of these moral rights. South Africa advocates under the African National Congress government for the sustainable and continued remuneration of performers given the country's economic context. And we believed as a committee in passing this, in adopting the report, that the WPPT is in the best interests of South Africa, as it ensures that protection of South African performers and producers of phonograms will keep pace with technological change, thus affording protection and economic benefits in the digital environment, which is directly part of the fourth industrial revolution, which is here. Aluta continua.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Are there any objections to the approval of the WPPT as it appears on the order paper? No objections. Agreed to, but I can see there are declarations that have been requested. Honourable Member of the DA.
Madam Chair, without the customary Fabian hyperbole, let me get straight to the issue of the day, which is about the treaties. At the outset, let me say that it is indeed in the best interest of South Africa to sign the World Intellectual Property Organization Performances and Phonograms Treaty and the World Intellectual Property Organization Copyright Treaty. They deal with the rights of performers and producers of phonograms, particularly in the digital environment. The committee has agreed in principle to ratify the treaty so there would be no misalignment between domestic and international law. Much needs to be pointed out, though. While South Africa signed the WPPT on 12 December 1997, a copy of the presidential minute authorizing such signature is not in the DTI's possession and could not be obtained from the presidency. And DIRCO has advised that we express our interest to be bound by way of an instrument of accession rather than an instrument of ratification. It is incumbent on us to ensure that the appropriate provisions exist in our international laws to ensure effective enforcement of the rights of the treaty. As has been pointed out in the past, signing a treaty triggers a timeline within which the signatory must be compliant. Have we been able to domesticate our international treaty obligations in this regard into our international law? No, we haven't. Why? This should have been done over the past 15 years, but alas, we have prevaricated. The Standing Advisory Committee on Intellectual Property has been non-existent for the past 10 years. It should have been overseeing intellectual property developments in law. The approach of the DTI and the committee that has been able to get the legislation in accordance with the relevant treaties and to sign the treaties was to sign the treaties rather than the other way around. We should be aspiring to be a world-class Performance Protection Act that is consistent with these treaties. Unfortunately, the bills currently sit with the NCOP, and they'll fall short of this goal. As a result, the DA has consistently pointed out that significant redrafting is required. The WPPT and the Beijing Treaty prescribe equitable remuneration for performers. However, the bill does not follow international standards in order to achieve this goal. It undermines, if not completely obviates, the freedom of contract to the detriment of both performers and producers, making it very difficult for producers to make investment decisions. And the ANC in committee and the DTI have proceeded with undue haste on the pretext of redress to saddle our system with substandard legislation. South Africa, as I've said, should aspire to a world-class Performance Protection Act that is consistent with these international treaties. Accession to these treaties would give South African performers the benefit of national treatment of their rights in other respective convention countries. But they prescribe equitable remuneration for performers. However, given that this bill does not follow international standards to achieve this goal in its reliance on contract terms and remuneration prescribed by the government in the new section 3A, prescribed remuneration in subsection 3B2, which incidentally does not meet the requirements of Article 15 of the WPPT, which requires a single equitable remuneration, And lastly, an onerous prescribed procedure for obtaining rights set out in the new sections 5, 1A to 1D. Make no mistake, these chickens will come home to rest.
Thank you. The EFF.
Madam Chair, for far too long, the West has violently appropriated not only people of African descent to grow Europe, they've also taken African innovations and African resources. Also vulnerable to this abuse has been the right of authors to protect their intellectual work and not have this taken from them by unscrupulous people. It is because of this support to creative and intellectual work that the EFF government will promote homegrown development for our people's capacity to write their own stories. It is also for this reason that the EFF government will promote the study of South African material at our schools. It is also for this reason the government of the EFF will pay royalties owed to living and departed musicians, including processing historical claims. This is because we respect intellectual property. Furthermore, the EFF government will replace SAMRO with a state-owned entity which will be tasked with looking after financial interests of musicians, songwriters, composers, and to protect their intellectual property. So, Chairperson, we do support both these reports by the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry. Thank you.
Thank you. The IFP.
Thank you, Chair. As we strive towards creative, just an effective and cooperative international order, cognizance must be taken to the fact that digital technology and the internet are part of everyday life of most everyone. In fact, as of June 2018, it was estimated that as much as 55% of the world's population had internet access, which equated to approximately 3.2 billion people. Chairperson, both of the treaties today are before Parliament for approval require member state countries to provide frameworks, legislation dealing with the basic rights, allowing creators to control or rather be compensated for the various ways in which their creations are used, and more importantly, to ensure there is adequate protection of their work and such protection of the rights continues. Technology protection measures have therefore been improved and adequate legal protection and effective legal remedies incorporated. Another important purpose of the treaties is both to update and supplement primarily in order to respond to developments in technology, new markets and new methods. The aim should be always to maintain a fair balance of interests between the owner's right, the rights of the general public and to fair access. The IFP supports the approval of the House to both agreements. Thank you.
Thank you, ANC.
Thank you, House Chair. Greetings to the House. Our commitment as the ANC of building a better Africa and a better world enjoys the nation's advanced rule-based international system. We therefore, as an African National Congress, support the request for Parliament to accede the World Intellectual Property Organization WIPO Performance and Phonographic Treaty and WIPO Copyright. These treaties, if exceeded, will be positive impact on our Performance Protection Bill and the Copyright Bill. These are bills that are intended to protect the right of the performers, actors, and other role players in the creative industry. The WIPO Performance and Phonographic Treaty is administered by the World Intellectual Property Organization, and it deals with the right of two kinds of beneficiaries, particularly in the digital environment: performers, actors, singers, musicians, and producers. The treaty provides actors, singers, musicians with economic right, equitable remuneration, protection against circumvention of security measures, right of distribution and rental, national treatment, and formalities of enjoyment of their right. A total of 99 out of 191 members states ratified the performance and also the treaty, including Kenya, Namibia, Nigeria, Canada, and Europe. Therefore, Chair, we support the treaty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now put the question again. Are there any objections to the adoption of the treaty? No objection. Agreed to. The Secretary to read the second order.
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of World Intellectual Property Organization Copyright Treaty in terms of Section 2312 of Constitution 1996.
Well, this is another treaty, is WCT, not WPP. Honorable Fabs?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you. The WIPO Copyright Treaty. Indeed, this is a very special agreement that deals with the protection of works and authors specifically on a digital platform. And may I add, as an author of poetry myself, I understand the protection. The WCT is in the best interest of South Africa, as it ensures that South African copyright law, yes, South African copyright law, will keep pace with technological change, thus affording important protection against piracy for rights holders in the areas of computer programs and databases. The WCT grants authors the right of distribution, thank heavens for that, the right of rental, and a broader right of communication to the public. With respect to these treaties, the accession, it will ensure copyright protection, performers' protection, exploitation of their economic rights, and access to the digital environment. The thing is, House Chair, when one uses the term exploitation, it's never ever understood in the positive. It's often understood in the negative. One can exploit mineral rights. You go there, you explore, etc. And in this instance, we're talking about the originators, the creators of copyright, being able to exploit their economic potential. It grants authors the right, as I said, to all of these things and communication to the public. What this does, and a lot of the members who came to the public hearings, stakeholders, were saying, can it ensure our, because you know what writers are, etc. I mean, we creative people, man. We don't want to be straitjacketed. This removes your straitjacket. And you then have greater creativity. And it also looks after the well-being. And what the committee realized is that, in essence, creators, and in one sense, all of us sitting in this house create. We do create. We often just don't recognize ourselves as that. But when we do it, if you like, as a profession, we target that talent that we have. And we say we are going to create it through writing. We're going to create it through this or that or the next thing. At that point in time, we want to protect you. And often, creators have found that the economic benefits that they enjoy are far lower than others on the value chain. And that has partly been because we have not effectively empowered people. We have not effectively communicated that this is the way you protect that right. So certainly what the committee did was to salute the WIPO Treaty, in particular the WIPO Copyright Treaty that deals with the protection of works and authors specifically on the digital platform, which is today becoming the most important platform in any country. I thank you.
Order. Honorable members, are there any objections to the approval of the World Intellectual Property Organization Copyright Treaty as it appears on the order paper? No objections and no declaration as sought. I haven't been appraised. Can we now ask the Secretary to read the next order?
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of the Beijing Treaty on Audiovisual Performances 2012, the Beijing Treaty in terms of Section 2312 of the Constitution 1996.
Thank you. Honorable Forbes. Beijing.
Sorry about that. No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. In fact, the Beijing Treaty, which I'm sure those members like the Honourable JJ, who've been here for many years, will know we never signed it. Even though we went there, we went to Beijing. But we will, when we ratify the treaty today, we will become the 25th member. And for this treaty to become operative internationally, we need, and I can see many of you are looking this up on yourselves, we will need 30 signatories. We will be, as South Africa, 25. Now, why do I give that explanation and go backwards? Because indeed this is one of the most important treaties, because it acknowledges broadly the intellectual property rights of performers. This Parliament, Honourable Chairperson, has heard much about property rights. But I wonder, whenever we spoke about property rights, if we ever realized that property rights encompass intellectual property. And you know what happens in our country? No, this is very important for industry and trade. People work here, they establish companies, and then when anything is discovered, the copyright, the intellectual property is registered out of South Africa. Well, we are not going to allow that any longer. By strengthening the audio-visual performers' economic and moral rights, and by strengthening these rights, the Beijing Treaty grants performers greater control, personal, individual control over the use of their work, and also the unauthorized use of their performances. The treaty grants 4 kinds of right, and I will read this. The right of reproduction, and I can say, no, you may not reproduce this. That is my intellectual right. The right of distribution, the right of rental, and the right of making it available. The treaty, and indeed, the workers fully support these treaties. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. The treaty also grants performers moral rights on live performances. Their right to claim to be identified as a performer, and their right to object to the distortions that sometimes occur in their works. This is so important. These moral rights may not be what we as fellow South Africans think of as morals or morality, but they are called moral rights because they are intrinsic to that person's inner creativity and integrity of the work. South Africa has always supported, under an ANC government, of course, the individual's right to dignity. That was the first platform of the ANC in a church when it was established. And we see this respect to dignity recognized here again. And may I say, Honourable House Chair, that the World International Property Intellectual Organization, WIPO, in Geneva, applauded the work we are doing as, in fact, the vanguard of progression in this area. But I do want to thank members of the committee who did some excellent work on the Beijing Treaty. And in fact, we were surprised as a committee to learn, oh, it's not operative because it needs 30 signatures. We unpacked it and we had no problem in agreeing. The ANC and the members and the committee at the time who did not object agreed. Thank you.
I'm sorry, your time is up, Honourable Fabs. Are there any objections to the Beijing Treaty 2012 as it appears on the order paper? No objections, but there have been declarations requested. I'll now recognize the DA.
Madam Chair, a review of the 40-year-old copyright legislative framework is necessary to enable a balanced legislative regime cognizant of the interests of all stakeholders, including consumers, owners, and investors. Accession to the Beijing Treaty, which grants protection to performers for a term of 50 years after the fixation of the audiovisual performance, will ensure that the law keeps pace with technological developments, that there's protection for the right holders in the digital environment, and that there's a recognition of new technological methods of exploiting copyright works. That the position of performers, producers, and the authors in local and other markets is strengthened, and that access to copyright works, specifically by the most vulnerable, is ensured. This is laudable. The committee has resolved to approve accession to this treaty. The treaty, though, is non-self-executing, and will not automatically become enforceable in law once Parliament has approved it. It will only become enforceable in law through the implementation of domestic legislation. Contracting parties have the obligation to ensure that the appropriate provisions exist in their national laws. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. Some of us were not surprised that South Africa had not ratified the Beijing Treaty, and it may well not accord with international law principles as well as provisions of the Constitution, which deals with international agreements. Additionally, certain procedural steps need to be undertaken prior to ratification. A cost-benefit analysis, a socio-economic impact analysis, provided by a cabinet framework to ensure suitability and adaptability of the treaty into national legislation. A regulatory impact analysis did investigate the amendment of various legislation to implement the contents of international treaties, but we believe that the Beijing Treaty specifically merits more scrutiny. The negotiating of all international agreements is the responsibility of the national executive. An international agreement binds the Republic only after it has been approved by the resolutions of this House and the National Council of Provinces. We submit that caution is exercised in this regard and the necessary analyses are conducted. Signature of the treaty constitutes a preliminary endorsement by demonstrating the state's intent to examine the treaty domestically and consider ratification, though signing does not creating a binding legal obligation to ratify. Ratification or accession signifies an agreement to be legally bound by the terms of the treaty. Though accession has the same legal effect as ratification, the procedures differ. I know this is arcane, so just listen on. In the case of ratification, the state first signs, then ratifies the treaty. The procedure for accession has only one step and is therefore not preceded by an act of signature. Most commonly, countries that support a treaty sign it shortly after it's been adopted. They then ratify the treaty when all of their domestically required legal procedures have been fulfilled. States may begin with the domestic approval process and accede to the treaty once their domestic procedures have been completed without signing the treaty first. It is submitted that these procedures be assiduously adhered to. I thank you.
Thank you, the EFF.
Honorable Chairperson.
Order, allow the speaker on the podium to proceed.
Honorable Chairperson, the EFF supports intellectual property rights of performers in audiovisual performances. We are firm in our belief that artists must be given the right of reproduction of their work, and that they must have the rights to distribute their work, the right for rental, and the right of making available their audiovisual work. This is over and above our other commitments to empower all kinds of artists in the country. For instance, the EFF government will take creative arts practitioners with experience and place them in schools to develop the curriculum and to teach and peer review each other. The EFF government will also pass legislation for 80% of all adverts that are aired by public broadcasters to use local music and African artists, a 50% minimum of which must be owned by women and the youth. This will further strengthen the ideals of the Beijing Treaty. No other party is capable as the EFF in advancing these ideals. We support the report of the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry. Thank you.
Thank you, the ANC.
Nakensa Mtsamashtul, honorable members, in Shikanloden, the ANC supports this ratification, Chair. The decision was taken on the 26th February and on the committee meeting that was held. The committee having considered, then we submit it for approval for ratification by this House. The Beijing Treaty on Audiovisual Performance was adopted by the Diplomatic Conference on the protection of audio performance, which took place in Beijing 2012, as some of the other members have said. And the critical importance of this treaty was to grant audio performers moral rights, protect their image, and economic rights to their performance, and therefore the Beijing has recognized all these important rights since audiovisual performance were left out of other key treaties such as the WPTT and the Rome Convention. House Chair, the main benefit of ratifying any treaty is to give South African beneficiaries access to these rights in other member states, including developing and developed countries. The benefits to this treaty will occur in a number of areas, including form of viewpoints of economic development, improved status of audiovisual performers, the actors, and cultural diversity. This is critical as South Africa has a vibrant film and television industry, and according to the WIPO study on the contribution of the creative industry, this industry contributes not only to the GDP, but to employment as well. The Beijing Treaty will strengthen and, where necessary, help consolidate local audiovisual industry as they join an international system of protection. Moreover, the audiovisual industry is labor-intensive, employing scores of performers, technicians, musicians, and other creators. Audiovisual content is also known for being a powerful vehicle for the promotion of locally generated goods and services such as cars, food, beverages, clothing, and tourism, and is therefore a perfect companion to export industries. The treaty will contribute to safeguarding for international exchange and access for foreign markets. This will stimulate multiple sources of investment in local production. The Beijing Treaty, as the chairperson of the portfolio, Honorable Fabs, has alluded that it's only 24 out of 199 member states that ratified this treaty. Then South Africa will become 25. So I'm sure with this ratifying the treaty, many more will ratify thereby entering into force. Our activists in the area of arts and culture created a platform from which the world could tap into the apartheid South Africa of old. Our plight could be better pronounced in the songs of the of artists like Mama Miriam Makeba, Letambuli, Abigail Gubega, and Dorothy Masuku. The latter has just left us, may their soul rest in peace. I'm deliberately giving an example of women for a change. Ours is the history of battle against oppression, where politics and arts merge like concoction. In the days where political girls were jailed on Robben Island, they could listen to those music and make sure that they are not depressed. The ratification of this international instrument help us to recognize these great daughters and sons of our country. Lest we forget what Nadine Godima wrote, that I open quote, African writers choose their characters and their plots, but their themes choose them, I close quote. It is in this regard that we in the ANC will want to ensure that their struggles are not in vain. We have for many years witnessed our artists within creative industry being exploited and still not benefiting from their royalties. I also pay tribute today to the actors and actresses who let into our homes every evening. You watch, you know, our favorite films and TV shows, to the stalwart of the industry like Florence Masebe, Charlize Theron, Terry Peto, Leleti Kumalo, Nambita Mpulwane, Alice Krieg, and countless others, and all of the new generation entering this industry. ANC salutes you. We call on South Africans to heed to the call by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa to all grow our country together and go all out on the 8th of May to vote, and you vote correctly. And when I say you vote correctly, I mean you vote the ANC, a better, creative, a vibrant South Africa for tomorrow. Vote ANC, Tumamina.
Order. I now put the question again. Are there any objections in agreeing to the Beijing Treaty 2012 as it appears on the order paper? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the fourth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Police on confirmation of recommendation by Minister of Police not to renew term of office of Executive Director of Independent Police Investigative Directorate.
Honorable the Chairperson of the Committee.
Honourable House Chairperson, honourable members and fellow South Africans, thank you for the opportunity to introduce this report on behalf of the Portfolio Committee on Police. The crux of the matter is that the previous Executive Director, Mr. Robert McBride, entered into a contract of employment for a period of 5 years. The contract between the Minister of Police and Mr. McBride was from 1 March 2014 until 28 February 2019. The 5-year contract does not include a renewal clause. We believe that all parties in the House agree that the contract was for a period of 5 years. There is no dispute about this important fact. The Executive Director posts at level 15 of the public service scale at the level of Deputy Director General. The normal contract for head of department is for a period of 5 years. It's also important to note that Section 63B of the IPID Act allows for 1 further term only, but the IPID Act is not clear on the procedure to be followed with respect to the renewal of the contract of the Executive Director. The standard process, which kicks in after the lapse of a term of 5 years, is that the post is advertised, there's interviews, there's shortlisting, and the selection of a candidate by the designated panel. In the case of a vacancy of the post of Executive Director of IPID, the process is initiated by the Minister, and in the final instance, the successful candidate is confirmed by the Portfolio Committee. In the matter that we are discussing this afternoon, the Minister informed the incumbent and Parliament that he's not intending to renew the contract of Mr. McBride after the 5-year period. The former ED was of the view that the PC on Police is empowered to consider the matter of renewal. Mr. McBride initiated an urgent application in the North Gauteng High Court, where the PC on Police was cited as the second respondent in the case. The settlement order that was granted in the North Gauteng High Court authorized the PC on Police to take a decision on the renewal before 28 February 2019. The PC on Police then embarked on a process in line with Section 56 of the Constitution, Rules 176 and 227 of the NA Rules, that empowers a committee to determine the procedure to be followed in dealing with a referral from the Honourable Speaker. The methodology and programme was duly adopted by the committee on Thursday, 14 February 2019. As part of our deliberations, we requested further information and documents from the Minister and the former Executive Director. Mr. McBride in his court papers acknowledged that he has no right or entitlement to renewal, and that the authority to determine whether the contract is renewed lies with the Portfolio Committee on Police. It's important to emphasize this point. The 5-year contract came to an end. The process of consideration by the committee was not a removal from the post. Not. The previous EE completed the 5-year term of office. The term expired. The committee have considered several substantive matters to determine the merits of the renewal or non-renewal of the 5-year contract. And we considered, for instance, the IPID Act, performance agreements, the Public Service Commission report, the Public Protector investigation, and the independence of IPID. The committee also took note of the case law that is in support of non-renewable contracts for institutions of a similar nature. The committee strongly endorses the constitutional provision of an independent police investigative authority that should strengthen accountability and oversight. The committee recognizes the important work and function of IPID to deal effectively with criminal and corrupt conduct of SAPS and MPS members without fear or favor. We strongly commend IPID, their management and their staff for their ongoing commitment to deal with systemic corruption in the South African Police Service. IPID is a critical role player to ensure a police service that is trusted by the public. We believe that the legislative framework of IPID should be further strengthened in the 6th parliamentary term. The PC on Police, as the responsible oversight committee, are also of the view that the leadership of stability at IPID and adherence to the relevant accountability framework is non-negotiable. It must be put on record that the committee carefully considered all the submissions and additional relevant documentation and provided during our deliberations. The observations and findings as stipulated in paragraph 9, 1 and 925 of the report forms the basis for the decision. In conclusion, the committee has concluded that the appointment of the ED of IPID should not be renewed for a further term. I thank you.
I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, House Chair. We move that this House adopts the report as presented. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion being agreed to? Yes. There are objections.
Chair, there are objections, and the DA would like to make a declaration, please. Thank you.
A declaration having been agreed, I'll now ask the Honourable Member of the DA to take the podium.
This particular bus was driven right over the cliff of partisan non-accountability. I have worked with various committees during my 15 years in this House. I have stood here on the podium many times, usually angry at the levels of crime and corruption, at criminality within the SAPS, and at the poor working conditions of our SAPS members. But what I've never been is desperately ashamed to belong to what I have until recently believed was one of the premier committees in Parliament. What we sat through and witnessed was a political party turning on one of its own, on, I believe, the orders of the minister. So the executive's now determining debate in a committee that, according to legislation, actually oversees that very body, the tail wagging the dog. I voted against the appointment of Mr. McBride as the head of the IPID, having carefully considered his actions post-94. However, Mr. McBride pulled up his socks and did a damn fine job. Indeed, according to the ANC Scopa study group, just 6 months ago, it was pleased with the progress being made by IPID in its probe into cases. McBride created a team. He survived the political attack by one of the 3 ministers he worked under, the creator of Firepool, the movie. And when the charges were chucked out of court, he returned, rebuilt what had all been but destroyed by the SAPs, and went on to root out massive state capture, corruption, the stealing of billions of rands from the SAP's budget. Our meetings were never about extending Mr. McBride's contract as allowed in the Act, or even about appointing a new IPID head. They were, I believe, about discrediting Mr. McBride so that when all is revealed to the State Capture Commission, it will be discarded. It was so obvious, I shudder to think what the court's reaction will be when they watch the footage of those 3 days when the committee all but eviscerated the man. He was called a liar, he was sneered at, he was demeaned, all with no right of reply. I asked that to balance the negativity they were obviously going to put in their report, not ours, it include his successors. No, they wouldn't allow that, saying that as various ministers failed to sign the performance agreements, there was no proof anything had been done. The fact that he'd reported regularly to Parliament was totally ignored. At the outset, Honourable Marquez said he was a lazy MP and hadn't read the documents anyway. Another ANC member said we were wasting the cost of juice and should just vote and throw him out. An ANC member twice called him a liar, someone who they refused to allow there to defend himself. Now that's the definition of a kangaroo court. Let's start with my particular favourite and quite possibly the reason why they now hate him with a visceral intensity rarely seen in Parliament. Through one of 3 investigations with a combined value of 106 million rand, IPID prevented SAP's crime intelligence from implementing the fraudulent procurement of a cell phone grabber device at a grossly inflated price. IPID believes the 45 million rand extracted through the procurement was to be used to buy votes at the ANC National Elective Conference in December 2017. There are the complex, politically sensitive investigations, 8 officers awaiting trial for Marikana, high-level investigations into 5 billion rand corruption in SAP's management. Arrests have been made there.
Honourable Member, Honourable Kola Parat, can you take your seat? Certainly. What's the point of order, Honourable Member?
Can the honourable member take a question?
Honourable Kola Parat, can you take a question?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
the list goes on and on, and what was the inevitable outcome in our parliamentary lexicon in relation to what happens when a cadre does a good job, like the Scorpions did. Honourable Karim, who became a deputy minister once he had destroyed that unit, although I don't think he is one any longer, in fact I gather he's out, did exactly that. They are attacked, their characters assassinated, and they are disposed of. And there is usually someone's hide that this activity saves. There is no prima facie evidence of misconduct on the part of Mr. McBride. Claims made against him are not evidence, they're merely allegations. And the mere institution of an investigation on the receipt of a complaint does not render the allegations more credible. These allegations were withdrawn and have now been dusted off and taken to the public protector, and I've no doubt that was with someone's encouragement. Meanwhile, the new minister has appointed an acting head of the IPID who has no security clearance, and they were absolutely silent about that. Finally, the head of the IPID does not answer to the minister, he gives him reports. The minister's there to act and speak for the police. Obviously, his job is to protect them, and their roles are adversarial. What if the next IPID head disagrees with the minister or finds out something he would rather keep hidden? Will you want to remove him too, and the next one too? The Act only says the ED must do his job, which he was doing, and as I said when I walked out, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
Order, Honourable Member, Honourable Person.
Thank you, Chairperson. Our position on this matter is quite straightforward. We respect Robert McBride for the role he played during the difficult times of apartheid. His youth was abruptly taken away from him by the repressive racist regime of white supremacists. But we can argue the same about many former liberators. Mr. Zuma was a liberator too, who turned out to be one of the biggest, hardest this country has ever seen. Robert McBride's history as a liberation struggle hero does not, however, entitle him to any position in government. The position of Executive Director of IPID is for a period of 5 years, and even though it's renewable, the IPID Act is silent on how the renewal process. So it is disingenuous of Mr. McBride to think that he is entitled to the position as head of IPID. There are other credible candidates who will follow and do the same good work as Robert McBride did. So we mustn't think that because we've done a good job, we're entitled to a renewal of our contract. What makes us even more uneasy about the brazen attempts to force McBride to this position is the support he's received from shoddy characters and organizations. Paul O'Sullivan has been unrepentant in his support for McBride, and we all know the role he has been playing in our criminal justice system. The support from right-wing organizations like the Helen Suzman Foundation is enough to raise alarm bells about what the agenda is here. The EFF supports the recommendation of the committee for very different reasons, not to renew the contract of McBride. Thank you very much.
Thank you. IFP.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The IFP would like to thank the services that Mr. McBride has offered to the country and to the department. However, there was no contractual obligation for the department or the minister to renew the contract for the next 5 years. And we would like to call on the department to actually begin the recruitment of the new director of the IPID and also urgently finalize the recruitment. And also would like to encourage the department to actually limit the political interference and root out the corruption that exists in some of the SAPS members. The IFP therefore supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Order. Honorable members, you are allowed to interject on the debate, but screaming at each other for me to hear from where I'm sitting, that can't be allowed. NFP.
Honorable Deputy Chair, let me start off by saying to Honorable Kola Barnard, you came here, but not a single iota of the truth did you present here today. Why? Tell me honestly why. The matter must be judged on its merits and the facts before. You deliberately misled this House today, and let me tell you why.
Chairperson.
Let me tell you why.
Order.
Number one.
Honorable member, can you take your seat? What's the point of order?
On the point of order, the member at the podium has said Honourable Kola Barnard deliberately misled the House. That's unparliamentary.
It's true. It's true.
It's unparliamentary.
Order, honourable member. I will check on that one. Proceed, honourable member.
Honourable House Chair, what are the facts of this matter? The iPad Act says you may extend it. It does not say you must extend it. The contract is explicit. It ends on the 28th of February. There's no provision for an extension. It is not true that the minister wrote to McBride. McBride wrote to the minister in September. The minister did not respond. He wrote again in November. The minister then responded. And in his letter to the minister, he is telling the minister, I know you're not going to extend my contract. So go and advertise it so that IPID does not suffer. That is what he said. So by implication, he knew his contract is not going to be extended. That's the first thing. Now, nowhere did he inform the portfolio committee that he wrote to the minister. He misled the court. He misled the public into believing that the minister wrote to him. Now, let's look at the facts. You report to the minister. The minister signs your contract. Your performance report goes to the minister. Only the minister, in terms of the act, will nominate to this committee. If we reject it, the minister will nominate again. So how can you say the minister is not an interested party in it? He clearly is. Now let me go one step further for the benefit of Honorable Kola Barnard. McBride says IPED will suffer if he leaves prematurely. But he applied for 2 jobs. If he got one of them, he was going to take the job and desert IPED. Now, if he was going to do that, where is the interest in IPED? It's not there. Let's look at the allegations that he's made. They all up to this day have been allegations, no convictions. And I'm still saying, and the NFP is still saying, if there are allegations, if there's evidence of any wrongdoing, you still have the necessary opportunity and channels to deal with that matter, report it, and it'll be dealt with. So you come here, you deliberately, and let me repeat, deliberately don't give the facts. Now, the minister and the McBride, clearly the relationship is not conducive. The minister is going to have to nominate and we're going to approve. So I think everything that the minister has done, other than maybe having responded
I'm sorry,
to him,
Honourable Member, your
is
time
a challenge.
is up.
So we are saying we've done the right thing. We support this report that McBride's contract should not be renewed. Thank you very much.
Honourable Ishaki, ma'am, can you go back to the podium? I've just consulted in terms of the former rulings that have been made. Deliberately misleading is out of order. Can you please withdraw? Yes. Order.
Honourable House Chair, can I address you on that?
Deliberately misleading the House has been ruled out of order. You can bring a substantive motion if you want to do that, but when you say a person is deliberately misleading the House, is, in terms of our rules, out of order.
But Honourable House Chair, I just proved the facts that she deliberately did not give us the facts that she should have given. That was at her right in front of her,
Honourable
Chair. But okay,
Member,
if that's going to
withdraw?
suit the Honourable Chairperson, without any conditions, I will withdraw that.
Thank you very much. UDM.
Honourable House Chair, we are not going to get involved as to whether or not the contract of Robert McBride must be renewed or not. Why? Because the matter here to us is about cadre deployment. That is what we said right at the beginning of the process when Robert McBride was appointed in the first place. But more fundamentally, our issue is how independent, I think a more critical and fundamental question to ask is how independent is the independent police directorate? If the minister, remember, this body plays an oversight role over the police. Honorable Kola Barnard is quite correct in saying, naturally, because of the positions that the two people hold, the relationship is likely to be adversarial.
Honourable members. Order. Order, Honourable Nkwankwa, allow the chair to make a ruling. Honourable members. Honourable members, can you please be in order?
On a point of order.
What's the point of order, Honourable Member?
Elungu elibekekileyo lithi siyangcola singamasela. Ndicela ayirhoxise lo.
Honourable Member, can I ask whether the Ngola part, it's not unparliamentary?
Yes.
But Amasela, did you mention that, Honourable Member?
Well, Madiba was quiet. I don't know why he rose and
Order.
He didn't make a noise.
Honourable Member, your time will be up. I'm just asking to indicate whether you did make the statement that you
I was
alleged to have
referring
made.
to my colleagues in the opposition benches.
Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you. Well,
House Chair,
Honourable members,
immaterial which members of the House, the honourable members is referring to, he still has to withdraw.
no,
because
can I advise Honourable Chief Whip? If you are not referring to an individual specifically, it is not unparliamentary. It's when you say Zodwa or so-and-so is this, that it is ruled unparliamentary. That is why I just wanted to understand the context. Honorable Deputy Minister, what's the point of order?
Hayi benifuna ukuthi somlomo asizontanga zakhe.
Honorable Member, that's not the point of order. Honorable Mandela, what's the point of order?
Zawucela usinyamezele sihlalo. La masela is plural. Ubhekisa kuthi.
Lungehloniphekile, unyanisile impela. Kodwa uba akho muntu obizwe ngegama, lonto leyo ayibekwa njengokuthi ayikho emthethweni. Bendizocela malunga sihloniphane siqhubeke, ixesha lide nine reports ezininzi apha. Can you proceed, Honorable Member?
Masela.
Honorable Member, can you please
6.1 of
proceed and not continue with the statement that is going to turn us back, please?
But House Chair, I thought it was parliamentary to say that.
No, but you can't continue
I beg
doing
your
that.
pardon,
Can
I
you
withdraw.
please withdraw and continue?
I withdraw, House Chair.
House Chair, can we, with due respect, the point that Inkosi Uzwelivelile makes is very he has not referred to any party. Let's first start there.
Yes.
If his reference was to a party, we will not have a problem. But he referring to all members of this house, including me. I'm taking serious exception to being called a thief.
Honorable Member, can you take a seat? Indeed, I understand you very well. That is why I said that if you talk of a collective, but if the Rules Committee wishes to make that order, honorable members, if the Rules Committee wishes to make that specific, it will do so. And please, honorable member, can you proceed with your speech?
Section 6.1 of the IPD Act provides that the minister must nominate a suitably qualified person for the position of executive director, and then the committee, on the other hand, must either confirm or reject the nomination by the minister. Our view as the UDM is that if you consider that IPD plays an oversight role in inverted commas over SAPS and members of municipal police services, we're asking whether then IPD is appropriately located by ensuring that they account directly to the minister when in fact they have to make sure that they play an oversight role over the minister. We say this consistently because not only is it going to continue to create this adversarial relationship between the two entities, but if you allow the minister to have a role to play in the appointment, it means it's going to lessen the effectiveness and undermine the independence of IPD.
Honorable Kwankwa, can you proceed with the speech?
Oh, it's a speech, Sam Jesse.
Don't continue
Point of order.
to interject.
Point of order.
What's your point of order?
They are interjecting me. I'm not interjecting.
You are not supposed to direct the program on your own. Proceed with your speech.
Order.
Honorable
Point of order.
Sonti, what's your point of order?
My point of order is, mhlali ngaphambili, asimuva uthini la mntu phaya,
Thank you
bayarasa
very much.
abantu
Can you
aba.
take a seat?
Bayarasa,
Can you take a
bangcolise,
seat?
njengoba uqhela ukuthi
Ndiyabulela mama, andithethi nabo mabozi.
Honorable Kwankwa,
Ndiphendula
can you please proceed with your speech?
Ndiyaqhubekeka, ndifuna ubaxela indaba zabo.
Honorable
Point of
Kwankwa.
order. Point of order.
Honorable Kwankwa, can you
Chairperson.
continue with your speech?
Chairperson.
Honorable Sonti, when you ask for a point of order, you stand and allow to be pointed. So you can't just continue. And your point of order with respect to the noise I've listened to, and I'm going to address it, so can you please take a seat? But also the member on the podium, I've asked him to conclude with the speech and not take your seat, Honorable Sonti. Take your seat. Take your seat. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, it is in all of our interest to proceed with the debate. And I think we should really, all of us collectively, honor the decorum of the House. Proceed, Honorable Member.
House Chair, ndizabaxela indaba zabo inyaniso emsulu ukuthi uba niyilungise le nto siyithethayo apha sizawuphinde sithi xa ku-expirisha le term sibe sixoxa lona benani apha sibe siteketa because into eyenzekayo into yoba lo mntu ugade amapolisa angenzi unothanda uripota kwa the same police ingaba yenza isense namaqabane. Ingxaki yenu nina into yoba ngoku ubhusasa unibonisile uba niyeba ngoku anifuna uxelwa loo nto apha kule house masela.
Honorable Nkwankwa. Honorable Nkwankwa.
But you are saying...
Honorable Nkwankwa, can you please...
I withdraw.
Listen to the chair.
I withdraw, Chair.
You know, no, not just on the withdrawal.
Yes.
When you are a speaker, allow the chair to actually direct the meeting. You can't want to direct yourselves when you stand as a speaker. Can you please take your seat?
But I didn't direct anything.
Can you please take your seat?
I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mike.
Madam Chairperson, with everything having been said, I would like to say the aim of the opposition in this House is to take over government and be the ruling party. This is done in many ways, sometimes either by hook or by crook. What then stands on their way for them to reach this destination? The party that is ruling, the ANC. Those that sometimes forget or are new or young, disorientated, confused, naive, weird, and black members of the DA. ANC means African National Congress, if they don't know. What it means then is that you have got to remove the ANC in order to rule. Who in the opposition, the DA in particular, has the qualities or capacity or even the bravery to engage in such an impossible and unachievable task? Madam Chairperson, we are here dealing with a simple issue which seems to be complicated by some people with hidden agendas. In a simple society of honest people, it would simply have been a labor relations issue which would fall under the law of contracts. But where certain people are involved, it becomes a matter of war, because for them it is an opportunity to cause havoc within the ruling party, looking for trouble even where it doesn't exist. When it comes to moral and legal issues, they are silent. When Comrade McBride was arrested for assault of his daughter, Honorable Mbele here wrote to the committee asking for him to be suspended with immediate effect. What is the DA saying today? That shows lack of backbone. They are just chameleons. Madam Chairperson, Comrade McBride and Comrade Begitela are senior members of the ANC. Whether the DA likes it or not, trying to drive a wedge between the ANC and members using them won't work. That has been tried a long time ago,
House Chairperson,
before
on the
any
point
one of
order.
us in here were born. Honorable Mike, can you take your seat? What is the point of order?
Ngiyabonga Sihlalo. Ngicela ukubuza if Honorable Make is willing to take a question on his allegation
Order, honorable
about my
members.
media statements.
Honorable Mike, would you like to take a
Not
question?
willing to account for you.
Honorable
all. I don't
Mbele,
want to.
he has indicated he's not taking a question.
ANC is the oldest organization in this continent. It has its own internal mechanisms of dealing with its own problems and challenges. We are not to be told by the DA. The decision was taken by the committee was based on the documents that were submitted to us as the committee. Of all reasons given, the most important of them was that there was a total break of trust between the two, which is a fundamental ingredient of working together, which happens anywhere. IPED is a very important institution in this country, taking into consideration the past that we come from, to fight corruption, mismanagement, and impunity within the police service. And by the way, it was established by the ANC government. It needs to be protected. It needs to remain independent. For it to deliver these objectives, with a break in trust, this can be achieved, especially because they are fellow comrades. It is therefore the duty of our organization to remedy this situation for the sake of service delivery. The ANC is not a boy. Asimushimanyana. Aya parishoti. ANC apara overall. An overall, which is a shirt, a jacket, a trouser, and maybe, but I'm not very sure, an underwear. It is everything. This is what the ANC is. An old lady in my village called me and asked me a question. My son, this young man, my man, does he think right? Does he ever think he can be a chief or an induna of the whites? It means he doesn't know them. He must think again. He will never. He's dreaming. Go and tell him when you go back to Parliament. I went to my peers and they were playing Muruba. My peers said the same thing, that if he thinks that way, he is a mumish. I went to Kualanga, they told me that if he thinks that way, kusho pamban. That is what my people say, not me. I only know him as Honorable my man. I tried to defend him, but they said, if you do that, just walk a mocho and you are dreaming, we are pambana. I then had to agree with every one of them, though reluctantly, who would like to be Barry anyway. Let the opposition leave us as the ANC to sort out our own problems. Almost every party in this house came from the ANC.
Order, Honorable Michael, what's the point of order?
The member in the podium is referring to the leader of the party as being a mumish and a mukhu. And I say that that is unparliamentary.
Order, Honorable Member. Did you say that, Honorable Member?
Can you hear us on the same order?
Can I?
Precedence, yes.
Order, Honorable Member, can I please ask him first, because I have to ask the member to confirm whether what is alleged he said before I can take another point of order. Order, Honorable Member.
I said the people of South, I even said I defended him. That is what I defended him, so I had to agree with them. That's what I said.
Okay. Proceed, Honorable Member.
Let the opposition leave the ANC. Almost every party in this house came from the ANC. Umntwana wapinda was a member of the ANC. The PAC comes from the ANC. COPE, EFF, AIC, UDM, and even the Premier of Western Cape was the member of the UDF, if I'm not wrong. In the ANC, you find professors, doctors, athletes, kings, chiefs, workers, peasants, if you don't know. Regalo loyal and ADA or never. You will all find them in the ANC. Madam, I withdraw if this is unparliamentary. Marabatlogomen. My comrade then
is up.
Is the chairperson of the board of the Indigenous Aviation Authority of Limpopo.
Order, honorable members. I now put the question. Are there any objections for the report of the committee to be adopted? There are objections, and those objections will be noted.
Chair, the DA calls for division. Thank you.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Order, honorable members. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as the members vote when the voting session is closed by the chair. Order. The question before the House is that the report of the Portfolio Committee of Police be adopted. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favor of the report should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Thank you. The voting session is now closed. Are all your things working? Things refer to the gadgets for voting that you have. Order, honorable members. The results of the vote are as follows. The yes, 172, the noes, 5, and therefore the report has been agreed to. The Secretary will read the fifth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Public Works on study tour to Federal Republic of Germany.
Honorable Memezi, chairperson of the committee, will introduce it.
Madam House Chair, all people of South Africa, honorable members, the Portfolio Committee on Public Works undertook a study tour to the Federal Republic of Germany from 9 to 13 September 2018. And on our return, we approved the report, and we hereby tabling it for consideration and approval by this august House. The study tour was an opportunity to observe and learn best practices on how the German government interrelates.
Order, those members who are leaving the House, can they please do so a little bit quietly, and those who are entering, so that we do not disturb the chairperson on the podium. Proceed, Chair.
Interrelate with one another at multiple levels, namely municipal, federal, states, and national. The system of government is practically similar to that of South African system that consists of municipal, provincial, and national government. The Portfolio Committee interacted with entities that work with German government across these three levels in the built environment, construction industry, the property management and maintenance sector. The committee aimed and gained insights into how the entities that work with the German government provide infrastructure and built environment services, how private construction and professional built environment companies and government entities cooperate with one another to ensure well-maintained green buildings. As a developed country, the German example assisted the committee with insights into innovative developments in the sector of public works that encompasses the built environment profession, construction and infrastructure spheres. The committee wanted to gather such knowledge to strengthen and deepen its oversight activities over the property management trading entity, PMTE, and the National Department of Public Works as a whole. The committee specifically focused to the need to plan construction and buildings that were sustainable and also using bulk services such as water and electricity efficient ways that make them easy to maintain. The delegation undertaking the study tour endeavored to discover existing good practices and innovative approaches in the built environment, construction, and public works sector. The manners in which innovative building material and built environment systems were developed and used. We invite the honorable members, the Minister of Public Works, and the department, as well as you, the people of South Africa, to go through this report up to the committee observations, the findings and recommendations. The good news for the people of South Africa is that the Minister of Public Works and the department, including DERCO, are already moving and implementing our recommendations, in particular on more than 20 years neglected born properties and other similar properties abroad. Masiyicaciseke le ndaba yezindlu ezisebhon. Indonga zaseBerlin zawa ngo-1989. Kwakusaphethe wona ke kanye lamadlagusha selekhala ngoku. Uhulumende we-ANC ngoku ulungisa amanyala wela xesha labo. Inyaniso ke ngenene ukuba imoto ehambayo yiyo ekhonkotwayo. Lonto siyibona apha kuthi njenge-ANC. Kungcola kanye aba babemoshe ilizwe lase-South Africa iminyaka eyi-300. Bantu bakuthi i-ANC iyanisebenzela. Nge-8 zikaMeyi masiphume sonke siyoyivotela. Yondla abantu abenkedama nempula zikalujaca. Banikwa nitsho nezindlu mahala ha. Abantwana bendlu emnyama ndithetha nje bangena ngobuninzi emayunivesithi kwangale ANC. Nditsho nasezilalini nasemikhukhwini kunamhlanje nje kuyalayitwa. Abantu bayatwebeza. Mawethu, votelani umbutho wesizwe uyazama kakhulu.
Point of order, Madam
Asingekafiki
Speaker.
ngakuwe suba novalo. Yiba nethemba lemini iyeza nakuwe.
Order, Honorable Memezi, what's the point of order?
Chair, this is an election speech. It's got no relevance to the actual item over here.
Order, Honorable Member, take your seat. That's not a point of order. All members have actually been, since the beginning of this year, throwing a bit of their campaigning in their speeches. Continue.
Asingekafiki ngakuwe suba novalo yiba nethemba lemini iyeza nakuwe. ANC support this report.
Order,
Siyabonga,
Honorable Member, your
siyabulela
time is
mawethu.
up.
Camagu.
The DA.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. The objective of the study tour to Germany was to educate members on best practices used by a first world country so that we can learn from the same and apply what we learned in South Africa. While it was a very interesting and informative, we were also exposed to more shortcomings of this ANC government. Arriving in Munich on Sunday, the 9th of September 2018, we were met by two consul general officials. They briefed us and gave us information about the two landers that they are responsible for, namely Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg. A number of agreements and partnerships have been signed with South African provinces and the two landers. The province of KwaZulu-Natal and Baden-Württemberg signed a twinning agreement in 1996 aimed at, among other things, the promotion of trade and economic relations. A joint statement of intent was signed in 1996 but was never implemented. There was also a twinning agreement with the Eastern Cape that collapsed as the Eastern Cape did not perform. There is a partnership with Bavaria and the University of the Western Cape. This partnership is still in existence. There is a simple explanation for this situation. The Eastern Cape and KZN are ANC-governed provinces, while the Western Cape is governed by the Democratic Alliance. The delegation visited the German Sustainable Building Council, DGNB, Diamond Certified Company, on day 3. The company operates from a renovated building. The Germans have very strict regulations and a lot of emphasis is based on safety and sustainability of buildings. Their buildings are well maintained, unlike in South Africa where people are expected to work in unsafe buildings. The company's profits and human resources are increasing at an average of 20%. The core business is building projects, and they have offices in many countries, excluding any African countries. They were asked as to why this is so. What is a silly question and can only be asked by a member of the ANC? You see, doing business in Africa and South Africa is risky. Investment is not safe due to the frequent corrupt activities by the ANC. The ANC is not serious about fighting corruption, and President Ramaphosa speaks with a forked tongue. He says one thing and does just the opposite. While the Democratic Alliance will send anybody found guilty of corruption to 15 years in jail, the ANC sends corrupt individuals to Parliament. On day 4, an IT firm housed in a DGNB certified building was visited. All buildings in Germany valued at over 2 million euros must receive a certificate of sustainability. After the presentation, we asked where they sourced their staff. The CEO said that most of the employees were recruited from local universities. The great advantage that youth are given employment opportunities, reducing the risk of youth unemployment. The Germans create many opportunities for youth, unlike the ANC, who create employment for the elderly and the corrupt. Towards the end of the tour, we visited South Africa-owned properties in foreign countries. We visited the embassy and the ambassador's residence in Berlin and 2 properties in Bonn. The conditions of these state assets are appalling, and this was embarrassing to say the least. Buildings are not properly maintained, and the reasons given were the ambassador has an expenditure limit of 1,000 euros. An expense above this threshold must be authorized by the South African head office. This sometimes takes up to 1 year to authorize. We visited Bonn, where there are 2 state-owned properties. One is a building used when the embassy was still based there, and the other the ambassador's residence. It was criminal to see that the embassy building was unkempt, vandalized, and left to deteriorate. The building is in a prime area and could be sold for a substantial amount. The house was even more dilapidated and has also been left to rot and be vandalized. It is like the embassy situated on the Rhine River, so this is prime real estate, but I don't think the ANC can comprehend this. Overall, the trip was an eye-opener and once again proved that the ANC cannot manage this country and safeguard its assets. The problem, we believe, is that our assets are mismanaged and there are no consequences for management, and nobody in DIRCO or Public Works is held accountable for wrongdoing. Our once valuable assets in foreign countries are deteriorating rapidly. The Democratic Alliance is the only party that can bring about change that builds one South Africa for all. So if South Africans want to see a change, vote the Democratic Alliance on the 8th of May 2019. I thank you.
Order what your speech has just done. I'm sure it answered your member earlier who were talking about electioneering speech. EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. The stated purpose of the Department of Public Works tour to Germany was to observe how the 3 spheres of government, namely local, provincial, and national government, relate to each other when it comes to constructions, property, management, and maintenance. But based on this report, it is clear that nothing was learned, and that little thought was put into planning the tour. Going through the report of the tour, it seems that a lot of time was spent inspecting South African properties in Germany and visiting a few middle interesting institutions, campuses, and other sites. But the reason I say it was a waste is because the manner in which public works are managed in Germany offers many lessons to us as South Africa. But these lessons were not reflected in the report. Firstly, in terms of the various spheres of government, local government in Germany is central to infrastructure development. Local government invests in infrastructure both for the provision of services and for the development of the local economy. In Germany, local government also plays a critical role in the maintenance and constructions of state buildings, whereas in South Africa, local government has little or no role in this regard. That is why, as the EFF, once we are in government, Listen, 60% of the budget be allocated to the local sphere of the government. It is a pity that the visit to Germany was not as educational as it could have been. But the reality is that even if this visit had been more educational, the current government is so stuck in its ways and blind to reason that practical and implementable findings from the visit would not have changed the programs and policies of the current South African government. We therefore reject this report. But South Africa, vote EFF on the 8th May 2019.
IFP.
Honorable House Chairperson, this study tour was a great reason to benefit and checks and balances that are inherent in federal system of government. And this is very similar to what we have here in South Africa in terms of our three different spheres of government. The study tour interacted across all levels of the built environment, maintenance and construction sectors. Agricultural projects were also visited with a view to replicating the process of the success of same Germany as well as our own embassy in Bonn and Berlin. Sustainable constructed building was a key inquiry in this study tour, as was the effective and efficient use of water and electricity in these constructions. Best practices were investigated with a view to implement same as home in South Africa. We indeed learned a great deal in this regard. What was particularly important was that the fact that they were strictly enforced ecologically, economically, functionally, and technically aspect in Germany model, built environment. A holistic approach as regard best practice was very evident in the building method used. Eco Farm Village established in one particular instance in 1991 have been, and by and large, successfully operated. Gender equality is practiced and skill transfer to youth and students are being successfully implemented at these farms. The elderly and disabled are also included in these community agrarian initiatives. Mention must be made through of the visit to our South African embassy in Berlin and former embassy in Bonn, which in our view is structurally unsafe. Maintenance is not being carried out by quality of personnel, and mission staff advised that in the event of a fire, the building in Berlin would be a fire trap. Urgent maintenance is required at this building by DPW, PMTE, in consultation with DECO. Isakhiwo sase-Bonn, okufanele ngabe sekudala sathengiswa kudala ukuze kukwazi ukulungisa saseBerlin. Ngicabanga ukuthi uhulumeni lapho uhlulekile futhi kakhulukazi uDECO akakwazanga ukuthi asibhekise mawukwazi isakhiwo esihle njengalesiya okungathiwa depredated and sifile kangangokuba ngisho sithengayo futhi prime land ngisho sithengayo akasakwazi ukuthi angabhadala imali okufanele ngabe kudala ayibhadala. Ngaleyo ndlela uhulumeni ka-ANC kulesi simo uhlulekile ukusebenza. Ngiyathokoza.
The ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Eric Twameka, really ANC, re support report here at table today. The study tour to Germany was very crucial in that as the first world country renowned for innovation and efficiency, it was important to learn from this country on how the public sector manages and the public work portfolio to do not only develop, maintain, and manage the state-owned infrastructure, but also to learn how it interacts with other sectors in order to drive innovation and job creation. The knowledge gained and recorded in this report from the visit will assist the Department of Public Works at the national and provincial level, but will also give insight into how to leverage the property management and trading entity to manage state immovable assets more efficiently and effectively and achieve the goal of government in infrastructure development and job creation. Sepedi se le sogana le le sa etego le nyala kgaetšedi. Honorable Chair, after the fall of Berlin Wall in 1989, the capital city and government offices were moved from Bonn to Berlin. Other embassies like France, Belgium, and others moved to Berlin, turning their embassy buildings into residential buildings that they rented out. The South African government, that was led by the National Party, the apartheid regime, did absolutely nothing to save those buildings. And that is what they did. You come here, there are shupa kamunwan. Oh, shupa munwan, you want 3 ya wana ishupile wena muni. You did not do your work. By the time the ANC-led government took over in 1994, a damage was already caused. However, Honorable Chairperson, uske wa lebala gore DERCO e tlisitše foreign service bill mora e phasisha ye e dumellang minister wa DERCO go ba le matla o tlhokomela dithoto ka moka tša ka ntle ga South Africa go ya ka molawana wa Kiama ebile mo fa le matla gore a ka kgona go rekiša tše tshwantse di rekišwe a boledišana le wa mphato wa gage wa public works ka gona bothata bo e tlo ba taba ya malomo. In considering this report, one must recall where we come from. In 1994, when democratic government led by the ANC took over, there was no single immovable asset register. After the apartheid regime was in government for more than 300 years, highly shocking. You did not have even a single asset register by that time. Mara, e ka no ba ile hore ba di gona ba di latile hore ba kgona ho ithufola ka dithuto tša setšhaba.
Honourable Member, can you take your seat? What's the point of order?
Thank you, House Chair. The Honourable Member is misleading the House. The apartheid government started in 1948, certainly not the 300 years, so if she could be historically inaccurate, it would be appreciated. Perhaps the colours she's wearing might have influenced her decision.
Ordered.
Thank you,
Take your
House.
seat. I note, Honourable Member, the point that you have just raised. Honourable Member may be just in correction on the numbers of years of that regime. It would be good you can continue.
Bayaswa. The government led by the ANC immediately commenced with project to develop an immovable asset register and brought all properties registered in various names such as the Union of South Africa and the former Bantustan governments into a single register under the Republic of South Africa. It has been a challenging task. However, under the leadership of ANC and the current minister, who introduced a 7-year turnaround program in the Department of Public Works in 2012, which significantly accelerated the pace of development of the immovable asset register, among other things. Since 2014-15, Honorable Chair, we have a credible immovable register, which just needs to be updated when necessary. The department has done a sterling work, though we know that we are not yet there. Continue doing the hard work. Re nyaka gore o bagagetšo setšhaba sa gabo rena ge go na le any thuto ye e leng gona mo gabo rena e le sa tsebe gore na e ka ba e le ya mang tsebišang government e tla e lokodišišwe ge e ba ke ya rena ya mmušo e tseneng ka dibukeng tša mmušo. Honourable Chair, when we visited Berlin, we visited also the South African Embassy. The Chancery building was planned and designed by 4 young South Africans, namely Kanti Maseko, Luyanda Mpatwa, Elun Samuels, and Mpeti Murujile. Most of the building's material used was imported from South Africa. As a result, the entrance welcomes visitors to South Africa Embassy as a symbolic place of protection where delegations felt home away from home. Efficiently, this means that we have capable minds born from this country who will take the country forward in the ANC government. And the ANC government is the only one that recognizes and nurtures these talents from our young youth. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, ki nyaka ke re go batho ba ga bo rena ke nako ka di 8 tša March tša May 2019 a re tšweng ka makatanamane re yeng re voutele mokgatlo o mogolo mokgatlo o re ntšhitše mokgobeng mokgatlo wa o tlhokomela batho e le mokgatlo wa African National Congress. Honorable Fig, le tla buša Western Cape, you will take control of Western Cape up till on the 7th of May 2019. You will never govern it again. We are coming. Arieng Rio Boncha batho ba mo di pela di nwa go gona metsi ka di 8 tša May 2019. Ke a leboga. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections. Honorable Sonti, if you object, please go to the mic and say so.
Sia object as EFF.
Thank you. The objection of the EFF is noted. The report is therefore agreed to. Can the Secretary read the 6th order?
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Small Business Development on study tour to Spain from 15 to 22 September 2018.
Honorable Bengu, the chairperson of the committee, will introduce it.
Honorable Chairperson, we presented the study tour report to Spain to this August House for adoption and for South Africans to vote for the ANC on the 8th of May elections. In 1969, the ANC resolved to use the concept of cooperatives to facilitate establishment of workers-owned enterprises and community-owned enterprises as an effective pillar to transform South Africa into a mixed economic system which would serve the people of South Africa. Fast forwarding to 2005, the ANC-led parliament passed a Cooperative Act number 14 of 2005 and the Cooperative Amendment Act number 6 of 2013, and then deployed the resources to achieve this noble goal. In 2009, DTI released a report indicating 88% failure rate of cooperatives, although government had invested enormous resources to promote cooperative. In 2014, a Department of Small Business Development was established to champion development of cooperatives in South Africa and build the required capacity for cooperatives to flourish. The South African government adopted a narrow approach in development of cooperatives. As a result, the process of development for cooperatives is slow. We then undertook a study tour to Mondragon to learn from successful models. We had intended to visit Kenya as a leader in Africa in development of cooperatives. Mondragon was in a worse situation in 1954 than South Africa is today. Mondragon focused on two things. One, it was the establishment of a college which was going to produce the skills. The second thing was to establish a cooperative bank which was going to finance the enterprises which were going to be owned by the people and also produce employment in order to reduce poverty. That resulted in ordinary people who were poor, unskilled, and therefore unemployable, becoming members, workers, and owners of enterprises. That introduced a democratically managed type of business and distribution of resources and wealth to develop the entire community of Mondragon. The Mondragon motto is humanity at work. They focus on knowledge, skills, training, research, and innovation, finance for cooperatives, and also manufacturing and retail for jobs that are created and products that are manufactured. We separated, as South Africa, we separated a process of development cooperatives from a process of providing skills and a process of intervening in poverty. That then created a situation where the process of developing cooperatives is not aligned to the process of developing skills, which are required to develop the local economy. Also, that situation results in a situation where the process of providing services is not linked to skills development. What is then required?
Chairperson, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thanks, House Chairperson. I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? There are no objections. However, declaration have been requested. I now recognize the DA.
House Chairperson, the purpose of this study tour was to visit the Mondragon Corporation, Spain's leading exponent of cooperatives as an organizing principle of business, learn from its successes and failures, and understand the role government plays in cooperatives and the social economy. The Mondragon Corporation has its roots in a technical college set up in 1943 in the town of that name by a Catholic priest, Jose Maria Arizmendaradiata. He came equipped with an extraordinary mixture of idealism and pragmatic talent. His purpose was to instill a set of values in the community based on sharing and participatory humanism, while training the youth in technical skills. It was all about, and I quote, socializing knowledge in order to democratize power. In 1956, 5 graduates of the college bought a small kerosene stove business and converted it into a co-op, which was followed in 1957 by the formation of a consumer co-op and later by co-ops in the finance, retail, insurance, engineering, and consumer durables sectors. 60 years after its formation, Mondragon Corporation encompasses over 266 businesses and is one of Spain's largest industrial groups with a turnover of 12 billion euro, or about 200 billion rand, and 75,000 employees. Its philosophy is summed up by its slogan, humanity at work, and an approach to business in which, and I quote, the generation of wealth has a single goal, the well-being of people and the community, achieved through competitive business and inter-cooperative solidarity. As one of the Mondragon executives put it, the essence of Mondragon is not the alleviation of poverty, but the creation and distribution of wealth in a fairer and more equal way. Their laser-like focus on innovation, technology, internationalization, and human capital development has paid dividends. Mondragon is the dominant business and employer in the Basque region, which boasts Spain's highest GDP per capita at 37,000 euro and ranks top in Europe's Human Development Index and 7th globally. To see how they did it, the committee visited the Mondragon headquarters and 3 of its co-ops, none of which conform to our preconception of what a co-op is. In South Africa, the failure rate of co-ops is 88%, so we have a lot to learn. The Ulmer Group makes a wide variety of capital goods, including forklift trucks, conveyor components, handling systems, and piping. Last year, it had sales of 728 million euro, around 12 billion rand. 70% of its products are exported, and it employs 4,685 people. Can anybody think of a co-op in South Africa with similar numbers? Fagor Arasati, which makes die pressing equipment and machine tools for the home appliances, aerospace, automotive, and engineering sectors, employs 868 people and had sales of 248 million euro in 2017. As we toured these premises, we were impressed by their commitment to a high-tech skills development, innovation, and an export focus. It was as if everybody we spoke to was reading off the same script. This is hardwired into their system and not forced onto them by some outside entity, while government plays a supportive, not a directive nor funding role. What can we learn from Mondragon and the Basque Country's achievements? First, at the co-op level, success does not come from grants or handouts, but from a rare combination of social entrepreneurship, committed leadership, cooperation, and competitiveness. At the regional level, success boils down to defining and relentlessly pursuing competitive advantage based on an educated and skilled workforce and a global perspective. During our short stay in Madrid, we met an executive from the organization representing Spain's social economy. It became clear that the social economy is taken very seriously in Spain, with over 43,000 social employers providing 2.3 million direct jobs and contributing 6% to the country's GDP. It is significant that it falls under the Ministry of Labour, with its primary aim being job creation. While we cannot simply transplant these practices to South Africa, we must be prepared to examine how the principles they are based on can positively impact our own policy-making process and culture. This is essential if we are to achieve both a sustainable co-op sector and prosperity in the wider economy. I thank you.
Thank you, EFF.
Diabonga, Chairperson. The Portfolio Committee of Small Business Development Study Tour to Spain was an opportunity to learn from the Spanish experience in the development and sustainability of cooperatives. Cooperatives are worker-owned, democratically managed enterprises which can produce a variety of products. Throughout much of Western Europe, as well as in the countries commonly referred to as the Asian Tigers, cooperatives have played an integral role in the development and growth of those economies. The largest cooperative in the world is based in Spain, and it's called the Mondragon Corporation. The cooperative is based on both democratic and socialist principles. It is worker-owned, worker-controlled, productive, and central to the economy of the Basque region in Spain. Workers have democratic say in the decision-making of the cooperative. They determine what happens to profits and decide where they need to invest in the production process. The cooperative was developed in response to the high levels of unemployment and poverty in the region and provided alternative forms of work and economic activity to the people of the region. But there are many more such cooperatives in Spain, which everything from banking to farming cooperatives. Unfortunately, cooperatives have never gotten off the ground in South Africa because of the state's refusal to support them, and because white monopoly capital continues to dominate the economy and all economic production and activity. There are many lessons to be learned from the cooperatives of Spain, but because the Department of Small Business Development is useless, and because the government continues with its implementation of neoliberal economic policies, the lessons learned from the Spanish cooperatives will not find expression in the programs of the current government. Thank you.
ANC. Oh, sorry. Honorable Member. Honorable Nkomo from the IFP will declare from her seat.
Thank you very much. The IFP, unfortunately, did not form part of the delegation that went to Spain. And this, of course, it's a matter which has got to do, or a limitation which has got to do with the numbers in the committee. And we would like this to be addressed in the next government so that even smaller parties get an opportunity to visit all these places and they are not automatically cut off. We would like to stress the importance of this tour because we went through the report and we read it thoroughly. We are actually encouraged that part of the issues which were addressed was actually to address the issue of the cooperatives, as well as to look at what one would term the Cooperative Act and how we can try and enhance it. We are grateful that the report clearly states what actually will happen and how it will happen. We are actually in agreement with the view that we need to broaden our perspective as far as cooperatives are concerned and look at the history of the IFP in KwaZulu-Natal, which championed the issue of cooperatives. And I would like to state for the record and for all to see and for all to hear that on the 8th of May, we are taking over KZN again. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Nkomo. The ANC, Tatani, Mabas.
Manana Mutsamwa wa xitulu. In my Xitsonga language, hiri rintihuringwe arinusi hove. South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world. Why? Because of capitalism, but especially because of apartheid and colonialism. And the DA was one of those root causes and champions of colonialism, lest they forget. Inequalities, unemployment and poverty.
Honorable Mawaso, just take your seat. Yes, Honorable.
I think you can do better. The Honorable Speaker at the podium is misleading the House by saying the DA supported colonialism. We never did. And if he has proof of that, he must say so.
Honorable Member, you know very well that's not a point of order. You are now debating with the member on the podium.
He's misleading the House.
Continue, Honorable Member.
Colonialism has been a cause of the poverty and the backwardness of South Africa. And it was racially informed. South Africa, inequalities, unemployment, and poverty are products of that colonialism and apartheid. And they need to be ruthlessly uprooted. Big business should not lie to itself. It needs SMMEs and cooperatives so that the whole country can thrive. The purpose of undertaking the study tour in Spain was to learn how they have mastered cooperatives. What are our historic experiences on cooperatives? Tina, ama cooperatives have been in our blood. Ukugazata esikolweni kwabantwana bethu mabathenga isinkwa abathenga neacha, that informs a cooperative principle. Litsima, ilima, plowing the fields and planting and harvesting as a collective, hoeing the weeds, and during harvesting together, while singing and eating together. That is cooperatives. Even lions, when they hunt as a pride, and that way they can conquer a big buffalo. Burial societies in spirit are cooperatives. It does not matter how poor the family is. Through burial societies, the collected funds are accumulated, and the poorest of the poor is buried with dignity and speedily. The only challenge is that burial societies must try to graduate from being specialists of burying. They must become specialists of economic growth through cooperatives, so that singagcini ngokutshala ama-casket underground. Yes, a tombstone better, but the issue ama-casket esiwatshalayo ayobola, let's rethink it. The trip to study tour to Spain meant to illustrate to ourselves that South Africans have this spirit. Building houses can be done through cooperatives. We have bricklayers in the townships and in the rural areas. They can be brought into a group through cooperatives. The only thing that has to be done is that they must be trained in the theory of cooperatives so that they are well informed as they execute. Let's revoke the spirit of Ubuntu. Community members are at the center of collective production. Government can support cooperatives by purchasing school uniform and feeding school products, hospital linens, as well as correctional services inmates uniform. All those can be done through cooperatives. Cooperatives are not new in South Africa. Even to some of the very conservative whites, it is just that they kept it only to themselves. White Afrikaners, as part of their recovery strategy from the disastrous Anglo-Boer War, used cooperatives as an economic tool. In agriculture, they established organizations like VKB and NTK, originating from Eastern Cape and from Nelstrom, respectively. Services offered to farmers include financing, insurance, mechanization, agricultural products, and seed processing. In banking sector, Volkskas was established in 1934 and later became a commercial bank. That is an example of a cooperative. The only disadvantage is it was extremely discriminatory. Father Jose Maria started cooperatives in Spain. He prayed. He led prayer. But above that, he worked. He led the nation to work. He did not make the nation to eat snakes and grass. He did not pretend to raise the dead to life. And that's why even Marxists will say religion can sometimes be an opium of the masses. It's something that we must seriously address. A great nation is a working nation. Praying is okay, but working is even more glorious. Cooperatives are an opportunity to correct the evils of colonialism and apartheid, especially the inequality between black and white people. Cooperatives go a stage further in ensuring that economic development is spread as equitably as possible so it does not produce super rich blacks at the expense of many working class and the poor people. Mondragon, now established worldwide, it is the largest cooperative on the planet, the 11th largest in Spain. Mondragon comprises 84,000 worker members. Mondragon is based on worker cooperatives and built on the concept of humanity at work. Mondragon seeks to establish a fairer and more caring company that respects the freedom, dignity, and development of both individual and the community. Human values prevail over pure economic material ones. eMzansi sithi ubuntu in action. Access to banking and finance by creating own cooperative banks. One of them is called Laboral Kuta, with 1.2 million clients. They have branches all over Spain, numbering 335. In joining cooperative commitments contribution.
Akensa Mchabiseki. Time up.
Loko mo votela ANC hiti 8. Mi ta va mi votela ti cooperatives.
Thank you very much. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. Can I ask the secretary to read the 7th order?
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry on study visit to Federal Republic of
Germany. Okay. Thank you. The Honorable Fabs, the chairperson of the committee, will introduce the report.
Yes. Thank you very much, House Chair, and greetings to everyone in the House. The report of the Portfolio Committee on Trade and Industry is on its visit to the Federal Republic of Germany. Why did we go there? Because all of us are aware, and that was one issue that all political parties were united around. It is important for us to get a better understanding of the fourth industrial revolution. Because we have heard positives, we have heard negatives. We have heard that indeed this could result in a great loss of employment. And then we have heard it can lead to great competitiveness. What exactly is this about? So we went along there, and that was why we went, and we began to realize that, do you remember when an industrial revolution, I think it was the first one, was about water and steam to mechanize production. And there were great revolutionary fights against that because indeed jobs were lost. So now we didn't need the same experience, yet we had to advance. And what we were interested in was the developmental path Germany had embarked upon. How did they achieve this? What was the support of government? And thirdly, the impact on that on actual employment. And fourth, was there anything else that they were looking at in this direction? One of the interesting things we learnt as we went about this was that cobots, and we said, what are cobots? Well, cobots, as we learned, are robots that work with you. You have this robotic companion who helps you to work better. The other issue, though, was would this improve our economy, our inclusive economy? And the interesting thing about Germany is that there is a mix of small and medium and large. It is not dominated, as in some countries, by only the large corporate companies. And in fact, if anything, it is the medium-sized company that seems to work very well, and a large number of small companies. Something else, we were sitting over lunch and I spoke to a scientist who had designed these robots, and he was an integral part of the system. And I said, you know, you've been very good to us, giving us all this information, bringing together the unions, the manufacturers, the companies, government, the human resource, the education. But tell me, what is that we can really learn? We are concerned specifically about jobs. And he said, well, you should be more concerned about the young people. Because today, most people think young people shouldn't be bothered with learning how to read. Because, you don't need it. There's Google, there's this, there's that. You can just check it all out there. He said, the problem is the robots will learn how to read and know how to read. And when the systems fail, guess what? They'll tell the humans what to do because the humans can't read the manuals. Secondly, teach your young people to think. Allow them to use these systems and then to use that information to reach a response to the problem. Thirdly, and that is logically and laterally, encourage innovation and creativeness. And I thought, yeah, I've heard all that before, what else? And he said something very, very interesting. And I expect all of you are more interested in your own conversations. But let me tell you what he said. He said, the one thing robots will not have that humanity has is compassion. And it is
Thank you.
that
On
will
that note,
distinguish you.
thank you very
The
much.
ANC supports.
I can see there's a request for declarations. Mr. Kachalia.
Thank you, Chair. The committee went to Germany to learn about how to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution, and since then has done nothing to prepare for its effect. The ANC speaks about the fourth industrial revolution like it's coming down the road, while in reality, we are halfway down that road already. For the edification of the members on the right, and for the Deputy President in particular, the first industrial revolution changed our lives and economy from an agrarian and craft economy to one dominated by industry and machine manufacturing. Oil and electricity facilitated mass production in the second industrial revolution. In the third industrial revolution, information technology was used to automate production. Although each industrial revolution is often considered a separate event, together they can be better understood as a series of events building upon innovations from the previous revolution and leading to more advanced forms of production. The ANC's view on this is best explained by my colleague Belinda Bozzoli's experience when she had the dubious pleasure of sharing a lift with some ANC members. One of them asked, wait for it, does anybody know when the fourth industrial revolution is starting? A bit like the National Democratic Revolution, I suppose, except that one is a reality and the other a mirage. Still, the trip should have been an eye-opener as to how government, business and labor work together to reskill workers whose jobs are becoming progressively redundant. But you see, in Germany, business is seen as a partner to the country's success, while in South Africa, business is treated as the enemy by the ANC and the unions. Here, an opportunity is never missed by the ANC to shoot the country's economic prospects in the foot, as they champion policies that have failed in history, revolution after revolution. The reality is that the poor are suffering grievously, with children being born into desperate material and psychological poverty, for whom the ideal of an equal opportunity for all is a cruel joke. But the fourth industrial revolution presents an opportunity. It brings changes through the value chain of business by improving processes, increasing productivity, and reducing costs. Instead of focusing on expropriation of land without compensation, South Africa has the opportunity to become an early adopter, accelerating, for example, its agro-processing development. The Germans know this. The ANC, alas, has no clue. There is a complete policy coherency in Germany when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution. We are not even close. Competing factions in the ANC compound this absence of coherence policy. While the ANC occupies its time with talks of nationalization and expropriation without compensation, even when the finance minister and the deputy president sing from very different hymn sheets, the German focus is about ensuring that companies understand government policy, grow their companies, and create jobs. Germany listen to this, has a vacancy rate of over 200,000 jobs per year. In short, they are creating more jobs than they have people to fill them. Isn't it extraordinary when you hear from the ANC that the fourth industrial revolution will cost jobs? Ultimately, as the fourth industrial revolution gains traction, available technologies will become simpler and cheaper, creating opportunities for smaller operators to take their place in the business value chain. The salient takeaway is help foster small businesses. These are the lifeblood and the hope of the economy. Put the social engineering and creation of 100 black industrialists on the back burner. That's not the answer. The DA is the answer. Remember that on the 8th of May.
Thank you. Honorable Paulson.
Thank you, House Chair. The Portfolio Committee of Trade and Industry's study tour to Germany should have given South Africans or members of this Parliament insight to some of the steps South Africa can and should take if we want to be innovators and producers in the fourth industrial revolution and not just consumers. In Germany, members of the committee experience how manufacturing has become increasingly digitized and automated, and insight was given on the impact the fourth industrial revolution will have on various industries and production processes. But while much can be learned from the Germans in their approach to the fourth industrial revolution, we must be aware of the differences between the economies of Germany and South Africa, as this plays a great role in understanding what needs to be done for us to be participants in the fourth industrial revolution. Germany is a highly developed economy where the manufacturing sector constitutes over 20% of the economic productivity. Here, manufacturing has been on the decline for 25 years. Think of here in Cape Town, in the Western Cape alone, the clothing industry, the textile industry, footwear that is closed down. So while in Germany it is about retaining workers, updating equipment, and adapting the highly industrialized and developed German economy to the production methods of the fourth industrial revolution, we in South Africa need to develop our manufacturing sector as a whole, at the same time that we are adapting technologies of the fourth industrial revolution to the productive process. This would require for us to have inward state-led industrialization and must include policies and programs which will strengthen the role of SOEs, protection of manufacturing and infant industries, state banks to provide interest-free loans to small businesses, state ownership of strategic sectors of the economy, and coordination between the needs of the economy and the skills produced by the education system. While the study tour was useful and insightful, we must be aware that unlike countries such as Germany, we do not need to adapt our economies to the fourth industrial revolution. We need to develop the forces of production and economy. The only way for South Africa, and to this is to all the voters out there, the only way for South Africa to unlock the potential benefits of the fourth industrial revolution is to vote out the dinosaurs on my right, vote out the racists on my left, and vote EFF. Come the 8th of May, you must vote EFF.
Thank you. Honorable Esther Hazen from the IFP.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report was for South Africa to consider how best to facilitate the integration of the Indies into global markets and to benefit from such industrial wave. Was there really a need for this tour when the Industrial Revolution at a time of global financial turmoil, trade wars, and is more of a myth than a reality? The committee found that the social compact that exists between government, labor and the private sector has been critical in facilitating growth. We didn't know that. There's additional need for more basic digital skills at schools and more digital competence at all stages in our basic education system, as if we also didn't know that. There's a grave need to develop and seek clarity on the on the right to use data and data ownership, as well as the need for legal security around the utilization of data for commercial and economic purposes, the committee found. It strives knowledge that international, regional, and domestic legal regulatory frameworks can either stimulate or inhibit the modernization of the manufacturing sector through the distillation process. Standardization has also been found to be the key development and enabling for interoperability between companies and processes. Chairperson, the automotive industries remain an integral part of South Africa's industrial policy, and policy certainty in this regard remains critical. Thank you.
Sithokoze. The ANC, Honorable Williams.
Thank you, House Chair. The Portfolio Committee, while in the Federal Republic of Germany, engaged with, amongst others, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the Association of German Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and trade unions that are engaging on the effect of the Fourth Industrial Revolution in the workplace. In principle, the Fourth Industrial Revolution is the development of cyber-physical systems where physical objects are embedded with software, microcomputers, and sensors to allow them to become intelligent and to interact with their environment and each other. This has led to digital manufacturing and smart production. The economic impact is increased digitalization and the interconnection of processes that would allow for the optimization, increased productivity and flexibility of products under conditions of mass production. The use of smart production systems could increase companies' competitiveness as well as lower costs of production. The growth potential for the Fourth Industrial Revolution has been projected up to 78 billion euros by 2025. We as a nation must take advantage of these digital breakthroughs and put ourselves ahead of the curve. These technologies must be taken and adapted to our environment and our circumstances. South Africa has a water shortage, and we need to combine old technologies with the new technologies and invent better ways to do things such as waterless sanitation. We need our youth to embrace new technologies like aquaponics that was mentioned by the President in the State of the Nation. The aquaponics process is one that combines fish and plants in a closed system to produce the same amount of food within a smaller area and with 90% less water than conventional farming. The aquaponics systems can be established in the inner city because soil is not required in an aquaponics system. The Fourth Industrial Revolution will also comes with challenges. Mainly, how will it impact on the workplace? Routine jobs are expected to be reduced or eliminated. As society evolves, work will also evolve, and we must not be afraid of this. We must embrace and lead the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We must educate our people to be fully able to exploit the opportunities that will emerge. Let us not forget that one of the biggest companies that existed on the planet was the company that produced ice. At its peak, at the end of the 19th century, the US ice trade employed an estimated 90,000 people in an industry that was capitalized then at $28 million, which is equivalent now to $1.6 billion. This whole industry collapsed when the refrigeration was invented, but the new technology absorbed those workers. So we mustn't be afraid of new technology. We must embrace it, and we must conquer it and move forward. During the committee's engagement with various stakeholders, it became apparent that the social compact that exists between government, labor, and the private sector in Germany has been critical to facilitate growth in the manufacturing sector and has eased the migration towards the Fourth Industrial Revolution. As a nation, we need to unite and pull together. Business, labor, and government need to build stronger ties and become a force of collective positive change. Let us grow South Africa together. Vote ANC. I thank you.
Thank you. Are there, oh, okay, may I please recognize the Chief Whip? I'm sorry, I should have done that before.
House Chair, we move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. The Secretary will read the 8th order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs on study tour to China.
Babu Mtagani, so ngakakubizi nokukubiza uchairperson lo we-committee uzayinikela i-report.
No.
Kubeka baba.
I thought because Honorable Deputy Speaker always fight with me, I thought that today I mustn't do anything that is unacceptable.
Thank you, okay.
And that's why I'm here.
Proceed.
Honorable House Chairperson, honorable members, the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs undertook a study tour to the People's Republic of China from the 2nd to the 9th of December 2017. The purpose of the study tour was to foster closer relations between the Portfolio Committee and the State Ethnic Affairs Commission of the people of the National People's Congress, and also sought to draw lessons and share best practices on poverty eradication and economic development. The Portfolio Committee observed notable best practices in creating prosperity for all. The committee drew much inspiration from the China eradication of poverty drive, its transformation of the 56 different ethnic groups into a socially cohesive society, its pride and investment in the vast cultural heritage, and its forward-looking urban planning. China's approach to development was homegrown and adopted to countries' unique circumstances. We noted that China adopted experimental and incremental approach to reform, which after many years of experimentation, eventually established China as the world's second largest economy and a global leader in poverty eradication. With this approach, China was confident of eradicating extreme poverty in all its countries by 2020. We should be 10 years ahead of the United Nations goal of eliminating global poverty by 2030. The Chinese government believed that there were essential prerequisites for successful poverty eradication. It is a cooperation between Chinese state and its private sector, the culture of accountability and consequence management, professional civil servant, the central government and its responsibility for ensuring that provinces, regions, and local government adhere to the country's poverty eradication targets. It also expected to apply appropriate sanctions where performance fails to meet expected standards for successful implementation of their strategies. They indicated that it was important to ensure central government have sufficient power and capacity to drive and inspire all other levels of government to embrace its poverty eradication vision. China economic growth in the main emphasized 2 points. On promoting agriculture and key poverty eradication strategy in countries' rural area, China development progress rested on choosing the right leadership and choosing the way of pursuing development that was right for China. And Honorable Chairperson, in conclusion, the Portfolio Committee left China with profound respect and high regard for the organization and administration of the country, the hospitality and administrative efficiency, and the State Ethnic Affairs Commission. The Portfolio Committee hosts for the duration of the trip in China were particularly outstanding. The committee supported the report, and we expect the House to approve the report after deliberation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Enkos. House Chair, we move again that this report be adopted by the House.
The motion is that the report be adopted, but I realize there is a request for declaration. Honorable Miller.
Chairperson, China is an incredible country with a rich history, and much can be learned from it. But sometimes when we learn, we need to learn from the mistakes that other people make. Over the past 10 years, China has made enormous strides in the fight against poverty. And yet, when one walks the streets or catches a train through the villages, there is still plenty of poverty to be seen. The presence of security in the form of police and military personnel was overwhelming, as was the presence of facial recognition closed-circuit television cameras and a near-complete blockade of internet access. And then there's the fact that we only traveled on strictly controlled routes and with dedicated guides to keep us on the straight and narrow. There was a distinct divide between the elite ruling class and the majority of Chinese citizens. The elite drive around in all the trappings of Western civilization, BMWs and Maseratis, and purchase high-end designer labels like Gucci and Louis Vuitton. The poor scrabble over the leftovers. The elite practice a debased capitalism that allows them to get progressively wealthier and more powerful, while the poor are subjected to the oppression and mindless regulation of communism. The Chinese government's approach to dealing with ethnic minorities is interesting because it is something that Honorable Ndakane was keen we should emulate. They isolate minorities into autonomous ethnic regions that are ostensibly self-governing, but in reality fall under the control of the Chinese Communist Party and its central government. Now, if that sounds vaguely familiar, it should. We had something like that here in South Africa, except the apartheid government called it homelands. Perhaps the most famous of these homelands is Tibet, a country with a fascinating history. And I say country because from an international legal standpoint, Tibet has never lost its statehood. It is an independent state under illegal occupation. And if it is under illegal Chinese occupation, then the Chinese presence there is a matter of legitimate international concern. If, on the other hand, Tibet is an integral part of China, then these questions fall, as China claims, within its domestic jurisdiction. The issue of human rights, however, including the right of self-determination and the right of the Tibetan people to maintain their own identity and autonomy, are, of course, legitimate objects of international concern, regardless of Tibet's status. China invaded Tibet in 1949 and 1950 and forced the then Tibetan government to sign the 17-point agreement on the peaceful liberation of Tibet. They did this under the watchful eye of 40,000 armed Chinese troops and the threat of immediate occupation of the Tibetan capital Lhasa and the prospect of the total obliteration of the Tibetan state and the Tibetan culture. Because it was signed under duress, it is void in terms of international law. And yet, the ANC government on my right continues to kowtow to China and ignore the plight of oppressed Tibetans. Chairperson, it is absolutely unconscionable that South Africa has on several occasions refused a visa to the Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, mainly because China would be upset by him visiting this country. So if anything, this study emphasized for me that China is not the solution to South Africa's problems. It is not a panacea to the racial, ethnic, and economic divides of our country. It is instead just another country with its own set of challenges, although these are much better hidden than elsewhere, largely because the Chinese people are unable to speak out against their ruling elites. So, Chairperson, let's sort out our own problems instead of importing someone else's. It's past time that we implement solutions that build freedom, fairness, opportunity, and diversity for all South Africans, not tired ideologies of oppression imported from foreign countries and foreign climes. On the 8th of May, vote DA.
Thank you. Honorable Yako from the EFF.
China is a country we as South Africa have a lot to learn from. In a period of 40 years, China experienced unprecedented levels of economic growth and development, and we were able to lift 800 million people out of poverty. The study tool primarily looked at how the Chinese government is able to manage ethnic differences amongst various ethnics. Because while China does not have such a racially divided history as we have it, they have a clear ethnic differences amongst its people. But the manner in which the Chinese government has gone about managing these differences and building a cohesive society is not through a mystical idea of a rainbow nation. It has done this by developing the forces of production of the country and by economically emancipating its people. This is based on the correct Marxist assumption that by addressing the economic differences amongst people, providing economic liberation, and democratizing the means of production, the social differences amongst people slowly resolve themselves. The Chinese government has been able to economically liberate much of the country because of the role of Communist Party and the state in the economy. Firstly, the majority of the land is owned by the state and is leased out. In China, state-owned entities are central to the economy. And in 2018 alone, Chinese SOEs had a revenue of $4 trillion and generated profits of $250 billion, more than our entire budget. The Chinese government has also put in place tariffs and subsidies to protect local industries and encourage industrialization. China also has a number of state-owned banks which provide interest-free loans, making it easier for small businesses to start and develop. The steps China has taken in an attempt to develop a sense of natural unity and to address ethnic divisions is a lesson for us all as South Africans. It is only by addressing the root causes of economic inequality that we as a nation will be able to unite. And in order to do that, and in order for that to happen to South Africa, an EFF government is needed. So in 2019, 8th of May, please vote for the EFF. Thank you.
Sithokoze. Mhlonishwa Kwezi from the IFP.
Thank you very much.
Umhlonishwa ulinde isikhathi sakhe lapha. Thank you.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I will deal with your issues, Paulson, later. At the onset, the IFP would like to express our support of this report. I had an opportunity of being a part of the delegation that went on this study tour in China last May as the IFP representation serving in this Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Portfolio Committee. Even though China is a communist state, there is truly a lot that we can learn from the way they conduct their government business. We could certainly benefit from their best practices. Their transport system is something to aspire to as a nation. Their road infrastructure, their railway infrastructure, and even their housing are all the things we can surely learn a lot from. The manner in which they have organized their affairs as a nation is truly admirable. I was particularly impressed by the feats they have accomplished in their poverty alleviation drive and their ability to attain and maintain a socially cohesive society. We found that the Chinese have impeccable long-term planning skills. They have foreseeable and attainable goals in place for their economy and society that span well beyond 50 years and have plans in place to execute those goals, which we all know is an era that we are found wanting as a nation. So we can actually learn from Chinese. They implement their plans as planned the previous years. I would like to caution against our collaboration with China where it does not ultimately benefit our poor. They have the propensity to rely only on their own labor when they make use of business opportunities within the Republic of South Africa. But even though if it is like that, we support this report. Thank you very much.
Siyathokoza mhlonishwa. Mudula stool. Ungayivala.
The Chair, I thought that we are debating a report of the committee out of his visit from China, not debating China. And then it's very important that we do that because China is a foreign country. And also we must avoid one thing though. I understand now why you have a problem in Gauteng, you are losing your votes. It's precisely because you are taking always the negative approach on matters of progress. That is why you are losing vote in Gauteng. In fact, you are gone. You are gone. And then Gauteng will never get it again. It's gone precisely because of the issue. It is my view that, you see, if you can at least take care of your brand and follow positive liberalism, I think we can succeed. At the moment, we have a problem of liberalism is under attack everywhere in the world because of your approach on development. And we got no understanding of the historical development of a South African society. I think to me it's a bigger problem. It's a bigger problem. On the way, 2019, May 8, you will be, of course, not ruling the Western Cape. By that time, you won't be here. And then we'll be leading the Western. Of course, the ANC support this report. The relationship between ANC and China goes back long before 1994. And moreover, the current relationship is based on Memorandum of Understanding and Exchange programs, as well as based on China and South Africa remarkable achievement in high-level exchanges on bilateral ties in the context of G20 and BRICS countries. And also in the cooperation agreement flowing from the 2013 summit held in Johannesburg. However, we noted although there are many formal agreements between the two countries at various levels, the State Ethnic Affairs Commission had no agreement with any public institution in South Africa, even though South Africa, under the leadership of the ANC and the Chinese Communist Party, share common mission of improving the quality of life of their peoples, having similar long-term vision, and plans geared at addressing the socio-economic conditions, addressing poverty, unemployment, and inequality for their respective countries. Thus, through the ANC 2019 election manifesto, which draws its influence from all positive contribution from all countries that we link with. Because the ANC is a learning organization, we have learned many lessons from our visit from China. Because the DA never learn anything, because they always think that they know everything under the sun. That's why you are losing Western Cape tomorrow. And of course, many of you will be in the opposition benches in the Western Cape come. In fact, all of us will be here. We'll pose that question whether they will win the Western Cape or not. I think all polls are telling you that you are losing it. That is the reason why even your leader now is busy in Gauteng, because you are losing Gauteng too. There's nothing else that you are going to win. And then you must understand that is going to happen. It is therefore against this background that the Portfolio Committee on Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs saw it fit to honor and invite the State Ethnic Commission of the National People's Congress to share our experiences and draw lessons of best practices, local economic development, capacity development in areas, innovation, finance, and organizational matters, targeted poverty eradication problem. It's a very important area that we learn from China, that you won't get rid of poverty if you don't target poverty. And all programs must target poverty. In the Western Cape, we must target poverty too, and then not leave the majority of our people in poverty. In responding to these questions, the State Ethnic Commission of the National People's Congress, drawing from their experiences of best governance practices, emphasized the following: the right leadership, professional civil servant, and the right way to pursue development. It is, of course, our view that China is a very important country. It's number 2 now economically in the world. They do have their own conditions that are unique to China, but they've developed beyond reasonable doubt. And I think in the next 20 years, they're going to be number 1 economic giant in the world. In fact, anyway, Honorable Melhem, of course we call him Nyatem Mhlophe, Honorable Melhem was extremely impressed and inspired by the Chinese experience. And I'm surprised that he comes here, he starts lambasting China. Because in fact, he was the most happiest man that is in China. He sees the speed trains. He say, hey man, if you can go to Gauteng and start doing this, then we'll be better off. but today he comes and grandstand on a country that is not here to defend itself. It is our view that the whole issue that the DA is doing, of course, May is not far, 1 month to go, and then I'm going to be proven correct when you are not here. In fact, you are going to reduce your majority even here. Your majority is going to be reduced, and you are not going to win anything, and you are going to be defeated overwhelmingly. Precisely because you don't want to understand the challenges faced by our people on the ground. Every time you do, you think that every part of South Africa is just Cape Town. South Africa is bigger than Cape Town. And you must understand the dynamics of the country on the ground. Therefore, we thought, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Chairperson, the ANC, again as a learning organization, we have taken positive attribute from all countries all over the world. We have never said capitalism is bad. We never say that communism is good. We always say you must take the best attributes from any country in the world. We have done that, and we are convinced that these areas of work will happen. Of course, we support the struggle of the Palestinian people for their self-determination. We support that. And then thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, the Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Okay, now. Okay, in light of that, I will put the question. Those in favor will say aye. Those against will say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chair, the DA calls for division. Thank you.
The division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Yeah, no. Eish. Thank you. Honorable members, are you all in your allocated seats? Thank you. The question before the House is that the report of the PC on cooperative governance be adopted. Are all members there in the allocated seats? The voting will now commence. Those in favor will press the yes button. Oh. Those against, let me start. Those in favor should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain, the abstain button. Het jullie allemaal gestemd? Dankie, dat is no gesleed. Thank you. The results, abstain 0, noes 4, yes 147. The report is thus agreed to. Ons gaan aan. Secretary will read the 9th order. Order, honorable members.
Consideration of report of Chief Whips Forum on study tour to Ghana and United Kingdom from 16 to 26 January 2018.
The Honorable Deputy Chief of the Majority Party will introduce the report.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Good afternoon, honorable members. Let me take this opportunity to introduce the report of the study tour of the Chief Whips Forum on the 16th of January 2018 to the 26th of January to Ghana and the United Kingdom. The decision was informed by the fact that our parliament is in a continuous state of development, and members should seek ways to improve, should seek ways and means to improve their efficiency and effectiveness of the work of the WIPO. The purpose of the study tour, Honorable Chairperson, was to enable the forum, amongst others, to learn the best practices from these parliaments with regard to the relationship between the whips and the office of the presiding officers, the structure of their program, especially in relation to plenaries, how oversight over the executive is exercised, and how in return the executive accounts to parliament, mechanisms available or designed to oversee the budget of parliament, the committee system and how they are capacitated, support given to members of parliament and also their constituency work, systems used to determine the remuneration and tools of trades and human resource needs of members, and also how the chief whips and whips in parliament operate with regard to their organizational institutional responsibilities and political management of the parliamentary program, relationship with regard to the administration of parliament, and maintenance of the decorum of this house, support for political parties and regulation of the political party funding. Upon our arrival in Ghana on the 16th of January, 2018, we were welcomed by the South African High Commissioner, Ms. Lulu Klingwana, in Accra, and it was agreed that the delegation will pay her a courtesy visit on the following day. The High Commissioner briefed the delegation on the state of bilateral relations between Ghana and South Africa. She further confirmed that the relations between the two countries is very good and healthy, with each country maintaining residential diplomatic mission in each other's capitals. The determination of the parliamentary calendars is rooted in the fundamental law of Ghana, in the Ghanaian parliament, which provides the Speaker with the powers to determine where and when a session of parliament will take place. Furthermore, once the Speaker is elected, they vacate their seat as members of parliament, and the convention in Ghana is that the Speaker, pardon me on that one. On the parliamentary calendar, the Speaker of Parliament is empowered by their constitution to determine where and when a session of Parliament would take place. Furthermore, once the Speaker is elected, he or she vacates her seat as a member of Parliament, and the convention in the Ghanaian Parliament is that the Speaker vacates her or his office with regard to her party, though she remain a member of that party. The structure of the parliamentary program, unlike in our parliament, where we have an official structure where we consult each other as chief whips, in Ghana they do so informally and operate more on a convention or as a parliamentary practice. Sometimes this creates this informal nature of consultation, create administrative.
Thank you. Unfortunately, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you. May I
support this report.
May I now recognize the Chief Whip of the majority party?
House Chair, I move that the report be adopted by this House.
The motion is that the report be adopted, but I will now recognize as there's a request for declaration. The DA.
Thank you very, very much, House Chairperson, for that. I know that a little while ago from this podium, my right honourable friend from the NFP had a lot to say about overseas trips and the fact that they are wasted and they're a waste of parliamentary money and we learn nothing from them. At the time, I did have some concerns that perhaps the fact that he was not going on these trips was the reason for the uncertainty about what the value was. But nonetheless, I think that this trip certainly, from all the trips that I've done as a member of this House, was probably the most useful of all of them. Because we really got to engage with parliaments in two different countries to understand and appreciate some of the systems that they have in place, but to benchmark them against what we do here in our South African Parliament, and to obviously give them some ideas as well about some of the good things that we're able to achieve here that they can learn from over there. And it was certainly an interesting trip. Ghana was a very interesting country, and their parliament was certainly fascinating to observe and interact with, in a really beautiful country and a very welcoming hosts that we had there. The system, however, was not the same as ours. They use a presidential system where the president chooses the ministers. There's far less parliamentary oversight and accountability than in a traditional Westminster system. But nonetheless, we were able to pick up some good tips there. And one of the great things that I think we took away from Ghana particularly was the multi-party nature of their presidium. So they have speakers and they have presiding officers from across the political spectrum in the House. And their experience has been that this tends to lead to a lot less conflict within the House if you've got presiding officers that come from across the political spectrum. The same applies to committee chairpersons, where there's a spreading of the representation to ensure that every single party, well, certainly the bigger parties that are represented in the House, actually feel like they have a meaningful role to play in the parliamentary situation. The trip to the House of Commons was also very, very interesting. And it was interesting to see the parallels. Obviously, we both use the Erskine-May manuals as the basis for our parliamentary debating rules and the rules of our House. And it was interesting to see a lot of the parallels between the two. And there's a lot more similarity between their parliament and our parliament. But bearing in mind, they don't operate in a constitutional dispensation where the clear delineations are made. They don't have certainly a codified written constitution which creates those separate powers very, very distinctly and clearly. And I think that some of the drama that we're seeing playing out in their parliament as we speak is a result of this tension now between the Prime Minister and her cabinet and the will of the legislature to exert itself. We learned some interesting things there. One of the things that I particularly enjoyed taking away, which is something we've got to consider when we come back for the 6th Parliament, those of us who are coming back, unlike the Honourable Mdekane, these are things that we need to implement here in this Parliament. So they have a dual debating chamber. So what it allows them to do is, while there's a debate going on in the main chamber of the Commons, they've got a debate going on in the Westminster Hall. And what this does is allow them to get through far more business than traditionally with all sitting just one chamber processing. So debates around petitions, debates around proposals from members of the public, debates on motions and the like are held in the Westminster Hall, and they're actually then able to get an airing, and it gives members of Parliament far more opportunity there to be able to bring the people's business. The oversight model there was very, very good. And I think that there's a lot to learn, because the one thing I think we can say about this 5th Parliament is that the one area we have not been a source of excellence is of this legislative processing. We've processed far too little legislation in this House. Our process has been too cumbersome. Committees are sitting for far too long with legislation, sometimes delaying it unnecessarily. And as a result, this 5th Parliament, I think, is going to have the lowest legislative output out of any parliament since the post-democratic South African Parliament was established. But what we also took away from there, particularly, was the issue of security, which has been a much vexed issue of this Parliament. And one of the great things to see there was that internal, in both Ghana and in the House of Commons, the internal security is handled by a parliamentary security service that reports to the Speaker. This entrenches a separation of powers where we have the SAPS that have far too much involvement in this precinct. And we need to start taking back control of the precinct and putting those security services under the auspices of the Speaker. So there was much to learn. To thank the Chief Whip for the camaraderie and the rest of the delegation and the officials that joined us for all the hard work that went into it. We can have these reforms in Parliament. We can have an activist, people-centered Parliament where the focus is on the people's business. We can have all of that and so much more, but we can't have it with the ANC. So vote DA on the 8th of May, and we'll reform Parliament for you.
Thank you. Honourable Paulson.
Thank you, Chairperson. The Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC must have had a horrible time. She couldn't even vocalize her experiences here, and I can understand why. If we as a country and society want to decolonize and chart a new path for Africa, we have to begin to break away from our former colonial rulers. And a good place to start is the culture of our institutions. Places like this Parliament, for example. The South African parliamentary system, like many former colonies of Britain, is a mirror image of the current UK parliamentary system. But unlike in the UK, where the system was developed and evolved over a 500-year period through trial and error, and you must remember 500 years ago, these people, we had established civilizations here in Africa, Mapungubwe, we had it here. These people were at war. We are speaking about people who were savages intent on destroying each other. As a result, you know, our institutions of governance need to go through a cultural revolution. We need to begin changing the rules, the decorum, and the very structure of the parliament we want to have as a legislature that is effective and speaks to the needs of our people. I mean, look at Little John was more comfortable speaking about that because that's him. It's not you, Doris. As African countries, we cannot continue to replicate.
Honorable Paulson, take your seat for a while. Yes, Honorable Steenhuisen.
Is the irony not lost on Tom Thumb calling me Little John?
Is he calling you? Anyway, I don't know who I was talking about. Continue, Honorable Member.
Honorable, point of order, Honorable House Chair.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Honorable Paulson is debating there, but then is referring to the Deputy Chief Whip of the ALC and a member of this House by her first name only. He must apply the rules, which I think he's getting familiar with, and refer to as Honorable Dlagude or Mrs. Dlagude, whichever he prefers. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Paulson. I call you Honorable Paulson. Can you do the same?
Honorable Deputy Chief Whip of the ANC. Okay.
Thank you.
But I took
Thank you.
Little
Thank
John
you.
from-
Continue.
I took Little John from Mighty Mouse, Yunus Karim yesterday, so. As African countries, we cannot continue to replicate European forms of legislating if we want to have governance systems that our people can relate to, that the Honorable Dlakude can relate to and understand, so that they can be represented in the legislative process which determines the laws that govern our people. The South African Parliament and institutions of governance need to undergo a cultural revolution, and because of this, and because of that, we reject this report. Thank you very much.
Ra leboga ntate. Ntate.
House Chairperson, on a point of process,
Yes, sir.
is it parliamentary for the EFF to reject the report when in fact their chief whip spent most of his time on Regent Street and Bond Street shopping?
Ayifuni mina leyo, Honorable Steenhuisen. Honorable Singh, thatha umpopo khulume.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. As the IFP, we support the contents as expressed in the report. And let me at the outset say, Honourable Chairperson, that one can never underemphasize the value of these study tours. Notwithstanding the fact that an honourable member of the NFP comes here like a stuck record over and over again and saying these trips are a waste of time, yet he himself participates in these tours, overseas tours, and so did the chief whip of the NFP, who is unfortunately not in the House. Because I believe that these trips provide opportunities to not only indirectly strengthen diplomatic relations with other countries, but also create opportunities for us to both learn and to teach. In essence, it provides opportunities for best practice to develop and evolve. And on this particular trip, Honourable Chairperson, I must say that it strengthened the bonds between the chief whips in our House. And we did great things together, formally and informally. And I think that was very, very good for us to be out on this trip. The 2018 Chief Whip Study Tour Chairperson to Ghana and United Kingdom was one such opportunity, and I believe was extremely successful on all fronts. Just to turn to some of the things that we learned, an interesting development in the Parliament of Ghana, Honourable Deputy Chief Whip, is that a speaker has to be elected by a majority of 75% of the House. And one of the deputy speakers, they have two deputy speakers, is a member of the opposition. Interesting indeed, hint, hint. And this initiative, as Honourable Steenhuisen had said, aims to promote leadership and coordination of House-related matters, which is great. But what was quite interesting as well is that in Ghana, the President does not answer questions in Parliament, which is something we insist on, and in fact we want more of in our Parliament. It's more open to that idea. You know, I saw honourable members, Chairperson, running in for voting here. The British voting system is very interesting. You see nobody and then you see everybody, like what's happened here. And those of us that watch the Brexit debates will see that happening. It's virtually empty, the House, and suddenly there's no space for you to move. But voting of 600 members is not done electronically. It's done manually, and it takes up to 14 minutes for the voting to take place. I agree with the issue of the mini plenaries. We need to really get our act together on mini plenaries. Another interesting arena, well, we met a well-known anti-apartheid activist, Lord Peter Hain, and I just want to quote what he said. I quote, "International confidence in South Africa, which used to be sky high post-democracy, is now at an all-time low. There is a need to reinstate confidence, the change of the finance ministers being particularly problematic. So we are being watched in this parliament. Baie dankie, meneer Voorsitter.
Dankie baie.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Molweni anisebahle bethu ezinkokheli. Deputy House
Order,
Chair,
honorable members.
House Chair, the United Democratic Movement supports the report because we will learn a lot of valuable lessons both from Ghana, our colleagues from Ghana, as well as the United Kingdom. But one of the things that we think are very impressive about how Ghana does it is that their constitution requires the president to appoint the majority of members of the cabinet from amongst members of parliament, which is what we do here. However, their appointment is subject to prior approval of parliament. How nice would that be if the New Dawn people were to adopt that? Because had we done this, Malusi Gigaba, for instance, would not have returned last year as the minister. So the case would also apply to Nomvula Nonkonyane, Minister, Honorable, I beg your pardon. But the other issue which is very important, which was highlighted by my colleagues earlier, is one of creating legitimacy in the institution of parliament so that it's not seen as a parliament of the governing party. The fact that one, the speaker has to resign, he or she must resign, his or her position, especially the senior position that he holds in a political party. They may or may not retain their membership depending on the jurisdiction, but in this instance, it would be much better if the speaker did not hold a senior position in a political party, number one. Number two, the fact that the second deputy speaker, especially in Ghana, comes from the opposition is a critical issue that we should consider in this parliament so that when we go into the sixth democratic parliament, remember this issue gives a legitimacy. You wouldn't have a situation where at times presiding officers come across as being targeted by members of the opposition. Kini Sistoka was saying, you're wearing an African print dress. If I had known, I would not have given you hard time earlier. The second issue, which we think is very important, in Ghana in particular, is that if a minister failed to appear on the date on which he or she is supposed to answer questions, the Constitution provided the House with the power to pass a vote of censure in the minister. We should do that considering how many times these benches are empty when people are supposed to be accounting to members of parliament and the people of South Africa in particular. What is also very important from where we're sitting, we think what should happen here in South Africa, if you consider the UK example where if people want a matter of public importance to be debated in parliament, they can have a petition, if it exceeds 10,000 signatures, an online petition, and if it exceeds 100,000 signatures, for example, that compels parliament to debate a particular issue. It means we will be true to the fact that we're a parliament of the people, and we're informed by what happens outside in what we do inside this parliament. So there are a lot of things that we learn from the trip. They are not a waste of time. Our recommendation would be that at the beginning of each term, maybe Chief Whip should embark on this trip so that they can learn and have enough time to implement some of these things. Siyabulela.
Ixesha lakho liphelile. The Chief Whip, ANC.
House Chair, thank you very much. Where's my time? There. But no, you know, as we mark 25 years of our young democratic dispensation as Chief Whips in the National Assembly, we resolved on the need to embark on a study tour in an effort to learn from other countries who have traversed the democratic road longer than we have, to learn from their laws, practices, and conventions in an effort to deepening our parliamentary democracy. We chose the Republic of Ghana as our first case study because, like South Africa, it is a former British colony, which gained its independence in 1957 and has been able to entrench a fully functioning parliamentary democracy. We chose the United Kingdom for the obvious reasons that because we were a British colony, our parliamentary system borrows much of its conventions from their Westminster system. We were, my daughter. One of the notable features of both countries is the fact that their public representatives are elected based, one on a presidential and constituency system, which other parties might be attracted to. As members will know, electoral reform has been under discussion in South Africa since 2003 with the release of the Van Zyl Commission report on electoral reform. At its 2017 National Conference, the ANC noted and reaffirmed the importance of the transparent election of public reps, which bodes well for accountability. As it stands, South Africa practices a mixed electoral system with proportional representation at a national and provincial level, as well as a combination of both constituency and PR system at local level. There is no doubt that the direct election of public reps through a constituency system entrenches accountability. However, given the history of racial, class, and gender discrimination in South Africa, we must bear in mind the possible unintended consequences, wherein those of a particular race, class, and gender will dominate such a system due to their historic position of privilege and their spatial location under the apartheid system. Therefore, our motivation for a constituency-based electoral system must appreciate our unique history of segregation under colonialism of a special type. A practice we did find rather interesting is the fact that in Ghana, opposition party members are appointed as second deputy speakers with specific areas of responsibility. Though this is something we used to practice in the past in this parliament, we believe that this is an area we can explore going forward as a means to ensure that all parties are equally responsible for the functioning of parliament as an institution representing the people of South Africa. The experience of mini plenaries in the UK, which has already been adopted by this parliament as part of our rules, must be fully implemented by the sixth parliament. In terms of the programming of the work of parliament, we found that both parliaments could learn a lot from how, as South Africa, we schedule our work of parliament through consensus of all parties, both in the Chief Whips Forum and the Programming Committee. Ours is more participatory and consensus building than what happens in these two countries where the Speaker decides on the program. South Africa is also quite advanced in terms of electronic voting in Parliament as opposed to the ancient means of head counts practiced in both Ghana and the UK. Both Ghana and the UK, in protecting their sovereignty, have disallowed funding of their political parties from any foreign source. The President has just assented to a bill passed in this House, the Political Party Funding Bill, which also disallows funding of our political parties from foreign sources. The reasons thereof are obvious. We also have a lot of respect for our own sovereignty. We can safely say that we achieved our aims and objectives of this tour. We learned a great deal from both parliaments and trust that our recommendation as tabled here today will be implemented by the sixth parliament. We wish to thank our South African High Commissions in Ghana and the United Kingdom for their gracious hospitality and support. We equally want to extend our gratitude to the MPs of both parliaments for opening their parliaments to us and also their public spaces. At a personal level, the two experiences which will forever be imprinted in my heart is our visit to the Cape Coast Castle in Ghana and my visit to ANC veteran Umama Unobadula of the London ANC branch. The Cape Coast Castle in Ghana is one of about 40 slave castles built on the 500-kilometer long coastline of Ghana. It was initially built by the Swedes for trade in timber and gold, but later used in the transatlantic slave trade. The dungeons of the castle were used to hold slaves before they were loaded onto ships and sold to faraway foreign lands like the Americas, the Caribbean, and Europe. These slave dungeons, which we visited, were places of terror and death, where slaves would be tortured and stay without food or water for days on end. Many of the slaves met their death right there. And those who were lucky enough to survive in the dungeons would forcibly be removed from their land of birth, and like pieces of cheap commodities would be loaded onto ships en route to their slave destinations in foreign lands. Some of them did not even arrive at their slave destinations. They died at sea. Many of those who made it to their slave destinations never came back to their land, to their motherland. Centuries later, the discrimination and segregation of indigenous African people continues to be a painful reminder of the terrible acts of colonialism all over this world. The fact that people like Umama Unobadula had to live for over 4 decades in exile far away from their motherland reminds us of how we have suffered as an African people, not to mention those who paid the ultimate price for fighting the human, racist, violent apartheid system. South Africa has, under the leadership of the ANC, come a very long way. And again, we say to our people, vote ANC on the 8th of May, 2019.
Sithokoze Mhlonishwa. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to.
Chairperson, note the objection of the EFF, please.
The objection of the EFF will be noted, but the motion is thus agreed to. The Secretary will read the 10th order. I never said it.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education and Training on study tour to Russian Federation on 14th to 21st September 2018.
Thank you. I will recognize the chairperson of the committee. Oh, okay, all right. Mr. Gikana will talk from his seat.
Chair, thanks very much. Yes, we did go to Russia to go and learn lessons about how education can be used to grow the economy of South Africa and create the highly needed jobs for our population, especially the youth. So it was actually a trip to learn finances of education, to learn education used for economic growth, to learn how TVET colleges are used also to contribute to the to the economy, and also to learn how challenges in education are addressed in Russia. Lastly, to learn about how they reach consensus with stakeholders like students, parents, business, parents, and government when there are challenges in education. The first thing that we learned was that Russia finances 45% free education based on merit and excellent performance. And this to us was very important We are grateful that during school visit in our constituencies, we saw one student in Gauteng getting 7 distinction in matric. We saw Koleka, a girl from a working class, who got 4 distinction in a BA second year. This year she's doing a final year. And we saw Bali from working class who had a mother who was a domestic worker who actually suffered from a stroke and Bali was taking care of her. Bali has finished today a BCom and she's doing chartered accountancy. So these were very impressive examples that we saw in our own community, and we realized we are also in line with Russians are doing to address poverty and to create jobs. It is very important also that we had students from Bloemfontein and Mpumalanga who are studying in Russia. They are studying in the field of medicine and agriculture, and we were so impressed because we could see they are taking the opportunity very serious and working very hard. Whatever is happening there, we think must be implemented according to our NDP, National Development Plan, because it is actually what National Development Plan is calling for in South Africa. I don't want to speak at length today because I want to go out and work for the ANC to win elections. And after winning election, continue all the good work it has been. Continue all the good work. Continue all the good work that it has been doing.
Honorable Paulson, you are making noise. How can you shout like that? You are disturbing the speaker now. Continue, Honorable Kekan.
We would like the ANC to take South Africa forward. I was speaking to my neighbor and he said, look, I had a lot of disturbances, but I'm still going to vote the ANC because I don't think there's an alternative in South Africa without voting the ANC. I call upon the House to adopt the report. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Drew. May I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party?
Thank you, House Chair. We move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted, and there is a request for declarations. Yes, the DA are allowed.
Geachte voorzitter, dis 'n voorreg om vandag kommentaar te kan lewer op die verslag aangaande die portefeulje komitee op hoër onderwys en opleiding se besoek aan die Russiese Federasie in September 2018. Die komitee was verras oor die groot getal jong Suid-Afrikaners wat tans veral op voortgraadse vlak in Rusland studeer. Die Suid-Afrikaanse ambassade in Moskou skat hierdie getal op sowat 700 leerders. Nie net verdien die Russiese Federasie waardevolle buitelandse valisa uit hierdie uitvoerproduk te wete hulle onderwys en opleiding nie, maar dit is ook vir Rusland 'n wonderlike geleentheid om hulle land en kultuur aan buitelandse studente bekend te stel. Maar dit was wel uiters kommerwekkend om te verneem dat 'n groep van sowat 100 studente wat met geldelike steun van die Vrystaatse provinsiale regering aan die Russiese Vriendskapsuniversiteit, oftewel Ruden, studeer, eers 2 jaar in China gaan studeer het. Net vir die Vrystaatse regering om nadat hierdie studente reeds in China was, te ontdek dat die Suid-Afrikaanse Mediese Raad nie hierdie mediese studie, hierdie graad van China, hier plaaslik sal erken nie. En toe moes hierdie studente verplaas word na Rusland. Dit nadat hulle met groot moeite eers Mandaryns moes instudeer, en nou moes hulle Russies bemeester om hulle studie in Rusland te kan voltooi. Pleidooie dat hierdie studente ten minste 'n mate van erkenning vir hulle voorafstudie in China moes kry, het op dowe ore geval. en hulle moes van vooraf met hulle mediese studies in Rusland begin. In die proses is hulle studieloopbane met minstens 2 jaar teruggesit en is 'n groot bedrag van die Suid-Afrikaanse belastings op hierdie wanaanwending gespandeer. Dat hierdie leerders hierdie swak beplanning, ontwrigting en vertraging in die verwerwing van hulle mediese kwalifikasies so gelate aanvaar en dat die personeel van die Rudin Universiteit in Moskou hulle nog steeds as positief ervaar, is werklik bewonderenswaardig. Maar dit moet 'n les wees vir alle staatsdepartemente en vir alle sfere van regering wat in die toekoms sulke lofwaardige inisiatiewe wil onderneem om eers behoorlik navorsing te doen, om eers behoorlik te skakel met die professionele liggame hier in Suid-Afrika. Ons jeug is eenvoudig te belangrik dat daar so met hulle toekoms rondgedobber kan word. Dit is jammer dat ons Suid-Afrikaanse universiteite so sukkel om aan die vraag na hoër onderwys in ons eie land te voldoen. Want met die uitstekende opleiding wat so baie van ons eie universiteite bied, sou ook Suid-Afrika waarskynlik baie waardevolle buitelandse valuta kon verdien. Ek wil graag nog 'n paar van ons indrukke met die lede deel. Die eerste is die verskynsel dat sommige Russiese universiteite hoofsaaklik weens historiese redes in bepaalde studievelde spesialiseer. Een voorbeeld hiervan is die Moskouse Universiteit van Vervoer met sy 93.000 studente. Hierdie universiteit het aanvanklik as 'n spoorweginstituut begin, maar spesialiseer nou in talle aspekte van vervoer en logistiek. 'n tweede voorbeeld is die Moskouse Instituut vir Elektriese Ingenieurswese, wat weer spesialiseer in alle velde wat verband hou met elektrisiteit. Dit sluit in die opsies beskikbaar vir die opwekking en verspreiding van elektrisiteit, maar ook verwante velde soos die prysbeleid en ekonomiese modelle ten opsigte van ander bronne van energie. Hierdie spesialisasie in bepaalde studierigtings stel die instellings in staat om 'n onderrigkapasiteit en 'n diepte van navorsing te ontwikkel waarvan baie ander universiteite maar net kan droom. 'n ander aspek wat opgeval het, was die invloed van die Russiese regering in die bestuur van en beheer oor openbare universiteite. Die hoofde van universiteite en lede van universiteitsrade word byvoorbeeld deur die Russiese president aangestel. Die vlak van akademiese vryheid wat so 'n trotse kenmerk is van Suid-Afrika se universiteite, word dus nie deur hulle Russiese ewe knieë geniet nie. Ter afsluiting, opvoeding en opleiding vanaf vroeg tot op naskoolse vlak geniet 'n hoë prioriteit in die Russiese Federasie. Vaardighede in veral wiskunde en wetenskap word hoog geag. In daardie opsig kan Suid-Afrika met vrug die Russiese voorbeeld navolg. Die Demokratiese Alliansie sal, sodra verkies, onmiddellik begin om Suid-Afrika se onderwysinstellings 'n prioriteit te maak. En ons het reeds gewys dat daar geld in die begroting hiervoor gevind kan word. Jong Suid-Afrikaners het dus alle rede om op 8 Mei vir die DA te stem. Baie dankie.
Dankie. Agbare lid Paulsen.
Thank you, Speaker. Yes, me again. I'm going to be a permanent feature of this Parliament after the 8th of May. The Russian education system has long been an example of the successes of a socialist education system. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union had some of the best mathematicians and scientists, and it was the Soviet Union which sent the first satellite into space, all of which was produced by an education system that was free for all. Still today, the higher education system of the Russian Federation is of a high standard, and nearly 50% of the 4 million students receive free education from the state. It is because of this that, according to the chairperson of the Russian Committee on Education and Science, 60% of adults in Russia have a university degree. John, you should go there. What the Russian Federation has also been able to do well is coordinate between the needs of the economy and the skills produced by the higher education system. With the Russian equivalent of the Ministry of Higher Education working closely with various sectors of the economy to place graduates once they receive their qualifications. Members of the committee were also exposed to what Russians are doing with respect to information technology, with the ministry prioritizing the training and development of IT specialists for the digital revolution, as well as the efforts the Russian government has put in to improve the research and development capacities of its universities, which has been helped by large-scale funding from the state, as education and the development of science and technologies has been closely linked in Russia from the times of the Soviet Union. Another interesting aspect was the insight members were able to gain on the importance of early childhood development and the role this plays later when people begin higher education, with the Russian state putting both legislation in place and making resources available to ensure every child has access to quality early childhood development education. All in all, the study tour was informative and many lessons were learnt. So, my honorable members on my right, I love you all. You're just not young enough, vibrant enough, progressive enough to give South Africans the education system that the committee saw in Russia. And I'm asking, if South Africans want the best there is for South Africa, they must definitely on the 8th of May vote out the ANC and vote for the EFF. We will give you invitations to the gallery with every sitting. We'll even fly you. We will give you the due respect for what you've done for this country. We will honor your name. Peter, you must sit down, not you. We will honor your name and everything you've done. We'll give you the respect and we'll show you that respect. So 8th of May, you will come and you will all attend the inauguration of Julius Salomalema as the President of South Africa. Amandla!
Babungwez.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. I deliver this declaration on behalf of the Honorable Inkosi E.M. Buteles, who is an alternate member to this portfolio committee. Higher education in South Africa has been contentious for a long time. It is not a new problem, yet it seems as though our government is only now rising to the occasion, as students have not been requiring funding this entire time. We do welcome each and every effort, though, because our main concern is always to ensure that all South Africans have access to education as it is their basic human right. The IFP believe that the education, training, and innovation system should cater for different needs and afford equal opportunities throughout the board, which is why we would like to emphasize that free education must first and foremost benefit the poor, whose lives on a daily basis are punctuated by the struggle and inequality. Our democratic rights are not for sale to be sold to those with deep pockets, leaving the poor, struggling and vulnerable, languishing in a socio-economic wilderness throughout hope and progress in life and unable to contribute to South Africa's economic growth and development because they do not have the money to buy education. Graduates from tertiary institutions will be stepping out into a workplace that is virtually not ready to accommodate them. So we are glad this report touched on ways to address this problem. We just hope that we are able to implement all that was gained on this tour and make us a better South Africa. The IFP supports this report. Thank you.
Thank you. The ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The ANC rises in support of this report. The Portfolio Committee undertook a study tour to the Russian Federation on the 14th to the 21st of September 2018 with an aim of learning from their best practices in the post-school education and training sector. Honorable members, many fundamental lessons were learned from this study tour. For instance, in their education system, like in South Africa, the education system, like in South Africa, is prioritized from an early age and mainly funded by the state. All spheres of government contribute to funding of education and are responsible for infrastructure of schools and universities. There is a massive injection to support universities to increase their research output and to develop specialization in certain areas. Vocational education plays a critical role in training people for the economy. The curriculum is developed by universities together with industry, specialists and researchers so that the curriculum responds to the labor market needs. They also have an option of furthering their studies at secondary vocational education and training after grade 9, and their training is linked to industry. Articulation from secondary vocational education and training to higher education is seamless in the Russian Federation. I do want to say, though, that our country also offers grade 9 graduates an opportunity to study at a TVET college. So most of the things that we have seen in Russia, they have been implemented or started to be implemented in South Africa. So the member who was speaking on behalf of the EFF, it's just that he is not in touch with the matters of education. In relation to free education, those receiving free education in Russia have the responsibility of plowing back into the public purse and to ensure that other deserving students are afforded the same opportunity. In relation to the fourth industrial revolution, Russia is investing in training of 500,000 ICT specialists by 2023 to produce relevant skills in the area of ICT. There were challenges that are also experienced in the higher education. Those include the low enrollments in the PSET due to low birth rate. There were also cases of loss of scientists and researchers and highly skilled people due to out-migration. Consensus is reached through engagement by various stakeholders. These stakeholders have been brought into the vision of government and are working together towards meeting the priorities of government. Honorable members, skills planning and forecasting for future development of the economy remains central in Russia, and there is also a skills planning unit. We thank our government for being part of the BRICS network of universities. Despite funding challenges, this network provides an incredible learning experience for our students. Honorable members, we must thank both South African and Russian government for providing annual scholarships to students from disadvantaged backgrounds. This has seen students from the Free State and Mpumalanga provinces taking part in the critical programs such as health sciences and agriculture, which are in high demand. There were also students from KZN and Gauteng. What was missing, there was no learner that said he or she was coming from the Western Cape, and it was very disappointing. So I think that's one thing that Honorable Father Race-Dazen forgot to mention. In relation to the recommendations, we are saying that the TVET curriculum should be reviewed and made more practical and be aligned to the needs of industry and economy. There should be robust promotion of TVET sector of the viable option of young learners. This is what the ANC has also resolved. The South African private sector should be more involved in education and training, and implementation of National Skills Accord should be strengthened. Members, I must say this in the few minutes that I have. As we grow South Africa together, we must ensure that we continue prioritizing education and skills development. Our PSET must continue to prepare our youth to contribute to society and the economy. Malunga hloniphekile, ngifisa ukuthi sengiphetha nje ake ngithathe leli thuba ngihalalisela ukhongolose KwaZulu Natal ngokujoyinwa amalungu eshamthetho amabili uComrade uNjabulo Mlaba obe usihlalo ophikwe lentsha kwi-IFP noComrade uSizwe Mchunu uphakade akagugi guga abafokazana uJama kaSilwane uNdaba Ezitha ubhuti wasemzini lo ube ilunga le-DA elikavile nobe umholi wayo isikhathi eside esifundezweni ngiyazi ukuthi baqonda ukuthi kusho ukuthi bazolahlekelwa amavoti angakanani akubonake kuphela laba abayeki abashiye phansi ngoba bayayibona ukuthi le nqola le ayihambi namanye amakhansela amathathu asemasipala wasemsunduzi ekuwucomrade uClaudel Chetty-Naidu obe yi-ward councillor ka-28 kube uRinesh Jagmohan obe yi-councillor laka-ward 30 kube ucomrade uNelin Naidu Atwaru obe owaye yi-councillor laka-ward 33 kodwa manje ubeseva njenge-PR futhi ewusotswebhu khona we-DA emsunduzi bonke babukelwe ngezandla ezimhlophe unobhala wesifundazwe sakwaZulu Natal uComrade uMdumseni siwukhomgolose siyathobeka ngalesisenzo sokukhombisa ukuthemba kangaka umbutho wesizwe isango ke lisavulekile isango lokungena uANC wozani nonke ungalahli ivoti lakho votela iANC impela kusewuwona lo wakhongolose owakhulula abantu baseMzantsi Afrika kusewuyena lo khongoliso oshintshe impilo zabantu mphakathi yakithi ngomhla ka8 kuMay asiphumeni sonke siyovotela uAfrican National Congress ngoba ayikho enye inhlangano eyazi insizi zabantu vote ANC
Siyabonga.
Vote ANC
Siyabonga mhlonishwa. Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, indeed, that was the last item. May I now ask if there are any objections to this motion, to this report? No objection, agreed to. The truth is that that was the last item, Chief Whip, and the business of the House is done and the House is adjourned.